Have you had your coffee this morning? I hope so. It's one of the first things that I do, even though Huberman tells me that I should wait 1 hour until having caffeine. And I'm really learning to despise that son of a bitch because he keeps telling me not to do the things that sometimes I like to do. I digress. If you're looking for coffee, I highly recommend that you go to blackriflecoffee.com. There, depending on how much time you have, let me just tell you, you're going to be able to spend all of it. Because if you just go across the very top of their website, there's subscriptions, coffee, apparel, gear, gifts, and then, of course, about. Each one of those has a drop-down with multiple options. And I'm going to let you decide which one of those that you want to use. Let's just say that they have everything from cool shirts, hats, beanies. They even had a poncho liner, I think, at one time. But don't be looking for that because I'm pretty sure it's gone. They have gear to make your coffee in. They have gear to drink your coffee in. They have gear to travel in coffee with. They have it all. I love the brand. I love the people. They make this podcast possible. People ask me all the time, hey, what can I do to help you out? You can support the brands that let me do what it is I'm allowed to do. And that is blackriflecoffee.com. Go check them out. My guest today is Aaron Smith Levin. I saw him on the Lex Friedman podcast, and it was it was a combination of two things. One, I love the way he presents himself and how open he is about talking about his personal experiences in Scientology. And the second part of that was I've been fascinated by Scientology for years. I've watched the documentary Going Clear. I've seen the Leah Remini show. I think it's called Aftermath, some version of that. But when I saw that he was on Lex's podcast, I had to reach out, and I'm so thankful that he responded, and we were able to sit down and record an episode for over 3 hours talking about his experience inside of Scientology. How about we get into it, right? I think so. Episode 281 with Aaron Smith Levin. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Where do you even begin?
I'm dying to know what made you want to talk about Scientology.
I have wanted to talk to somebody about Scientology for a long time.
Yeah.
So I love documentaries. Years ago, probably close to when it first came out, I stumbled across the Leah Remini documentary that had Mike Rinder in it as well. Going Clear. My favorite part about that documentary was how in the beginning, people who had left Scientology pitched you on it. They gave you this. They gave you the pitch, like, come on in, let's tell you about this. And then they're like, fuck all that shit. So from watching that, I was fascinated by it. And I did reach out one time to, and then I started watching this series that Leah and Mike were doing together. I'm like, fuck, I'm reaching out to Mike. Never heard back, but it clearly says on his website, you're probably not going to. So I was like, you know what? The man's upfront and honest. And then I saw you on Lex's podcast. And I love his podcast. He is he's a unique man, for sure. I'm actually 33% convinced he is one of the AI robots that he's worried about. Just straight-faced at all times. But it's just, I'm fascinated by the things that people believe. And I was actually thinking a lot, because you and I have been going back and forth for a little while now about sitting down and talking about Scientology, obviously. And what I don't want to do is make anybody feel bad for whatever belief system that they have. I have a different feeling if they're trying to manipulate people with that belief. Like, you know what I mean? But the lazy approach is, oh, well, they just must be stupid, which isn't the case. I know people who know, not know, they think they know. They believe some really weird shit, but they're great people. And it's more a matter of who they heard about it from, their life circumstances at the time, the impact that it had on their life. But it just fascinates me. And, I like Tom Cruise movies, and I think he's a weirdo. And I was just, it's like I have to know all the answers. But where do you start?
Yeah. So, so many places we can start.
Start with yourself. How did you get into it?
Well, I was basically born into it. I mean, I was 4 years old when my mom got involved.
Which is such a unique optic, because that's so different than somebody who is in their, call it mid-20s for a male, where their prefrontal cortex is kind of finishing up a little bit, depending on the person, obviously, who makes that choice as an adult, and then somebody who came into it. So you, and again, because of the path that you found into and then out of Scientology, I have so many questions about like, what the fuck has life been for you like since you left? It must be like not like an everyday awakening, but I bet it was for a little bit at least. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a lot of time to talk about all this.
We
right?
have
So we don't have to go in a straight
terabytes.
line. Okay, good.
No, I hate straight lines. Straight lines are so boring.
I'll tell you one of the funny things about the Lex interview was how much shit he's taken in the comment section for trying to get me to take Scientology more seriously in the conversation. And Lex doesn't read his comments, I'm sure.
So hold on. Their critique is he didn't get you to take what you were talking about more seriously?
No, the critique was that there was a part in the interview where he was trying to get me to take Scientology's beliefs more seriously. And I'm
how many years did you live it?
Right. I mean,
it's like, how could you possibly?
So I'm not. This isn't I'm not criticizing Lex.
Yeah.
I think Lex was as uncomfortable. Like you just said a moment ago, I don't want to make fun of anyone's beliefs. I think Lex went into the conversation with a certain amount of discomfort.
Yeah.
That this was going to look like we were making fun of Scientology, and that's definitely not on brand for Lex.
Yeah.
It is on brand for me.
I don't.
Because I can get away with it a little bit. But Lex, he's an intellectual, he's an academic. Yeah. He's going to be criticized for, they're going to call him a bigot if he's just making fun of Scientology. I can make fun of Scientology. I grew up in it. I worked for them from the age of 12 to 26. I worked for them full time. I've come first. I can make fun of them. Now, I make fun of them tastefully because I want the content that I put on YouTube to be something that would actually resonate with people who are still in Scientology. I want them.
Are they allowed to watch it?
No, but if they stumble upon it, I want them to go, wait a second, he's being pretty fair.
Yeah.
And you can make fun of something in a way that is fair.
I don't even want to make fun of it. I'm fascinated by the belief system.
That's right. Well, let me be clear. When I say make fun of it, I just mean giggle while I talk about it.
Yeah.
Like the Xenu story, the body thing. That's funny shit. Now, you're not going to hear
That's
me say...
That's an interesting word, because other people would say crazy shit.
Well, it's crazy funny. You're never going to hear me say Scientologists are stupid for believing that.
Yeah.
That's what some people think of when they think of making fun of Scientologists.
And again, that's the lazy man approach, right? It's just, anybody who believes that has to be intellectually incompetent. It's like, that's not the case at all. Because then that same type of mentality is what lands us in the most divided that we've ever been as a country right now anyway. Oh, you're on the left? Well, I'm on the right. You must be an idiot. I'm like, holy cow. Can we be a little bit more nuanced than that?
Right. Yeah.
Like, is it possible to be 1% more nuanced than that? Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not true at all that people who are in Scientology are stupid or you have to be stupid to fall for it. I think, in fact, when I was in Scientology, that's what I thought about people who had other belief systems. There's this one podcast called Cults to Consciousness. The girl who does it is a former Mormon, and she interviews former Jehovah's Witnesses, former Scientologists, and it's funny to see how these cult members or members of high control groups, they all think you have to be stupid or crazy to be one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And those are really interesting conversations to see what are the things about that other belief system or group that you just thought was absolutely, you'd have to be stupid to believe that. But everyone else is having those same thoughts about the group that you belong to, but you've got that blind spot there so you can't see it. So that's why talking about Scientology can be so funny for me, because I'm talking about things I used to either very much believe or just casually believed without inspecting it very much. And you say it out loud 10, 15, 20 years later, and it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what I do on my, did you see me on Lex before you ever saw my channel?
No. Lex's interview led me to your channel.
Okay. So, my channel, which is Growing Up in Scientology, it's, you could probably say I spent a lot of time making fun of Scientology, but not making fun of Scientologists.
Which I think is fair. You're attacking an ideology as opposed to the people that may prescribe to it or not. And I think that is the fairest approach. So if you were essentially born into it, was it your parents or just your mom that got you into it?
So my mom and my dad were never really together. That's
Okay.
why I have the two last names, Smith, Levin.
Yep.
Smith is my mom, Levin is my dad.
Okay.
And and it's my mom who got into Scientology, and she
How'd
raised
she
us.
find it?
So she moved out to the East Coast from Iowa. She met some friend named Cheryl Scordato. I don't actually know how they met, but they were same age, similar circumstances in life, both young mothers. And Cheryl was already in Scientology. So Cheryl introduced my mom to Scientology in Philadelphia. My mom basically instantly joined staff. There's like 3 different levels of involvement in Scientology. There's the public, who are just paying to do Scientology.
Yeah.
Your celebrities are all public. Then there's
Celebrity centers?
Well, there are churches of Scientology. Only a small percentage of those are called celebrity centers.
Okay.
But like a celebrity, that's someone who pays to do Scientology.
Like a Travolta type person?
Any celebrity that you associate with Scientology, John Travolta, Tom Cruise, whatever, they are called public Scientologists.
Okay.
Because they pay Scientology to get auditing and do courses. Then you have your staff members. They work for Scientology, but only like it's their day job or it's their night job, and it's only for like a few years, 2.5 or 5 year contracts. And then once you finish your contract, all square, you don't owe them anything. They don't owe you anything. You're done.
It's an improvement on the billion-year contract.
Well, then you have the billion-year contract, and that's the Sea Org.
I'm like, we're going from, okay, paying for a service, 5-year, semi-reasonable. Let's just jump right into the fucking bucket of unreasonable.
Yeah, and so the billion-year guys, that's the Sea Organization. And there's so many different avenues we can take this down, but we don't want to get too far into the weeds too early if it's not that.
Here's my biggest question on anybody signing a billion-year contract in 2023. With the information that is available to everybody, how could anybody think that that is a reasonable choice?
Yeah, I mean, it gets silly when you call it a billion-year contract.
Yes. I mean, I'm like clear. I don't read a lot of the small print. Like if I get a new iPhone, I'm like scroll, click.
Yeah. But if it said billion years on there.
You know that they've done tests where they hide goofy shit into those contracts and almost nobody reads them. It's like, hey, we have the rights to your firstborn children. It's like people are just clicking away.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, the Sea Org sounds a little bit more involved than my new iPhone from a perspective of my time allotment. I would pay attention a little bit more to what I signed.
Yeah. It's essentially the equivalent of, I guess, in the Catholic Church, someone's signing up to be a priest. And the idea is you're supposed to be going into that agreement expecting it's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So Sea Org members do join the Sea Org with the expectation it's going to be what they do for the rest of their life. That is the expectation. It's why you're not allowed to have kids in the Sea Org.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You cannot have children.
Are you allowed to date?
Only other Sea Org members.
So if you were to get married or date and you wanted to have children, you'd have to leave the Sea Org?
You wouldn't even be allowed to have a conversation about having children. If you accidentally get pregnant, you would be pressured to get an abortion.
Fuck.
And you couldn't say no, but then you'd have to leave the Sea Org. But it's not like they're like, oh, we're so happy you've made this decision. You're starting a new chapter in your life. No, it's you're violating your billion-year contract. You're destroying, the aims of Scientology. Sea Org members are few and far between, and you're gonna go off just to have a child. You've lived billions of lifetimes. You've had billions of children before. Scientology is the only thing you've never done before in your entire existence, and you're gonna leave to have a kid? How unethical of you to do that. How off purpose.
Fuck.
What a piece of shit you are. Yeah. And
God, that is an interesting way to view that.
You'd be separated from your spouse,
Yeah.
and they try to handle you separately to divorce the other one and stay. Like, Scientology's fucked up.
I mean, I guess I can understand. That's a very Machiavellian approach, for sure. And I guess I can understand it, but the snake eats its own tail on that one eventually. One of those two people is going to probably get pissed about the process, or both. And then I would say the trajectory would, and again, I don't know, never lived in that belief system, but that's an interesting way to handle that. I would think that an organization maybe would want to have more members so a child could, in fact, add to the overall ranks.
Well, what they would say is public Scientologists and staff members can have children.
Just not the Sea Org.
Yeah, they would say,
yes.
all those other guys who haven't made the billion-year commitment, let them have all the kids.
What do Sea Org people do?
I actually have a video of what do Sea Org members do all day, because people ask that question all the time. Any business that you can think of has its standard functions. Your HR, your recruiting, your sales, your accounting, your operations, your quality control, your business development. Scientology has all those divisions. And it has a ridiculous amount of redundant levels of management. It's an awful lot of chiefs and not enough Indians. And all those functions exist in a Scientology organization. There's nothing particularly unique about it, except instead of selling coffee, they're selling courses. Instead of selling therapy, they're selling Scientology auditing. That's the business of an org, is to sell courses, auditing, and books. And everything else just exists to make that possible. But they're not doing that great of a job of it, to be honest. A lot of people don't realize how quickly Scientology is shrinking and how small Scientology is, because it gets so many headlines. You know, you hear about Tom Cruise, you think there's so many celebrities that are in Scientology. Most of the celebrities that are in Scientology these days were born and raised in Scientology.
Yeah. When did Scientology really start growing, and then when would you say it started dwindling in size, like you just referenced?
Well, everything started in 1950.
With L. Ron Hubbard?
With L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics. And then I think it was by 1954 he'd started using the word Scientology. And early 90s, very late 80s, but probably very early 90s is when it started declining in terms of membership. David Miscavige, who runs the organization, has figured out how to extract more and more money from less and less members through various fundraising schemes and real estate operations. But membership-wise, at the very peak, there was maybe 100,000 active members. Now it's closer to 25 to 30. A very generous estimate. I did another video estimating, showing the math, breaking Scientology down by continent, by echelon of organization.
Yeah.
The most generous estimate you could come to for how many Scientologists in the world, and you do not get more than 35,000 Scientologists, no matter how generous you want to be.
What do you think is causing the decline? Is it access to information?
Yeah, I think it's the internet.
Yeah.
It's the internet access to information.
It's one of the beauties, right? It's siloing information from people, or literally geographically separating them from a portal to information.
Yeah.
I'm yet to find an example of where that went really well for the people or the organization that attempted to do that.
Yeah.
And there's generally not an altruistic reason for it.
Yeah.
Like, don't look over there.
Right.
Why?
So, I mean, this opens the door to a really funny part of Scientology.
Fire away.
Which is the fact that, you know, they have this, it looks like a giant poster. If I showed you a picture of it, it's like a giant poster on a wall.
The bridge?
The bridge to total freedom.
Like I said, I'm into the documentaries.
Now, you mentioned Going Clear. Now, that's not Leah Remini's documentary. That was...
She was in it, though.
She probably...
I think
don't
she
remember,
was.
but okay, I just wanted to make sure that was Lawrence Wright.
Actually, you know what? She wasn't in that one.
I don't think she was.
I think it was her TV show that I stumbled across. But Going Clear, which is what I was like, oh, this is fucking interesting.
Alex Gibney did the Going Clear documentary based off of the book Going Clear by Lawrence Wright.
Gotcha.
And Mike Rinder was in that documentary.
Yeah.
So there's the crossover there because Mike is the co-host of the Aftermath show.
Correct. Okay, yep. That's exactly how I found the two.
And have you seen... So you saw the Aftermath show?
Yes.
Do you know that I'm in that first season?
No, I don't remember you seeing you in that first season.
My episode was about me and my twin brother.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the bridge to total freedom. The top half of that bridge is completely confidential, even to Scientologists. Most Scientologists have no idea what's on the top half of that bridge, what those auditing levels consist of. Now, South Park, that's where you get the Xenu and the body thetans. And so South Park, it's not that South Park was the first time that information was made public. It's the first time that was made public in popular culture in such a big way.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Well, there's the bridge.
Is this the bridge to total freedom?
Yeah, that's the left. So zoom out a little bit so you can see.
I don't know if it's going to let me.
Oh, it's going to... You better figure it out, Michael. Holy shit.
If that's a Mac, you should just be able to command minus, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, boy.
That's still the bottom. Can you scroll up a little? There you go. So you see where it says
Michael's
clear
right at class 4 right now. He's really working hard.
Trying to get up there.
Okay, so you see in the middle where it says clear?
Yep.
That's essentially the demarcation point. Everything above there is confidential. Everything below there is not confidential.
I remember them making a big deal about that in the Going Clear documentary. Like there was an actual like award ceremony for people who had hit that point. And they showed a couple of them actually.
There's an award ceremony for every single point.
Fuck
like
yeah.
there's a weekly graduation, you get a certificate, you give a success story. It's very like
Micro rewards.
Yes, yes. So we were talking about the internet access to information, and that there's not really usually an altruistic reason for siloing information off.
Yeah.
If Scientologists knew early on what was actually on the OT levels, they could never be convinced to keep paying for the next level.
I don't think you could get anybody through the front door if you started at the top and described it on the way down. Like if you defined all the levels.
Yeah. I mean, you'd probably get some.
How much so how much has this been expanded? Because I swear in that first documentary, the bridge looks smaller. Or maybe they were focusing on a different portion of it. But it seems like it has continued to grow over time.
Nope.
Really?
It's always been the same. I mean, when L. Ron Hubbard was alive, he would every now and then rearrange the bridge and stuff like that. But he died in 1986, and it
How did he come up with this shit?
It's some pretty brilliant shit.
I mean, you have to look at it from at least a slight degree of genius to lay this out. And then not only to lay it out, to layer in everything that he did. Also, what people might not know is he's one of the most published authors in like the history of authors from a written word perspective.
Now, Scientology has massaged and manipulated some stuff specifically so that they could submit for that Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh, did they?
I mean, they've basically taken every, essay that he wrote and published it as its own thing and translated it into 50 languages so that they could say L. Ron Hubbard's the most published author of all time.
He was a prolific writer, safe to say.
Without question.
Yeah.
And, sometimes people ask, did he really believe all of his own bullshit? I'll tell you, he absolutely believed his own bullshit. He didn't dedicate his entire life. I mean, if I showed you, if I pulled up some image of the entire L. Ron Hubbard library, it wasn't all for the lulz.
Michael?
I'm already on it.
It wasn't all for the lulz.
Yeah.
He believed his own bullshit until the day that he died.
You think so? You think he died like a true believer in what he was putting out?
100%. Because when he died, we talk about Xeno and the body thetans. Those upper OT levels are all about getting rid of body thetans. Well, the last 6 years of his life, he was off into seclusion with just a small handful of people around him. And up until the day that he died, he was trying to get rid of his own body thetans.
What was the mechanism he was using to do that?
Well, Scientology has a solo auditing
e-meter?
process that you have the e-meter, and he actually asked one of the guys, his name was Sarge, to build him a special version of the e-meter that had extra high voltage that he could use to shock all of the body thetans off of his body and then kill the body so that he could leave his body without having the baggage of the body thetans on him. That to me indicates he believed his own bullshit. He wasn't just putting on a show for people. And
wow.
There's a few examples I could give of why I think L. Ron Hubbard was the kind of guy who couldn't tell you a story about something that actually happened without prettying it up with a whole bunch of bullshit.
All right, so this is the Barnes & Noble page.
Oh, yeah. This is just going to be the stuff you can buy in bookstores, which isn't going to do any justice.
One page.
I mean, that's all fiction. I'm talking
there's
about
27 pages, though.
27 pages of this.
Holy shit.
But I think he was sort of a mad genius. I mean, really.
Like you have to have some semblance, if not a high semblance of intelligence to be able to lay something out like that and weave it together into a place where you could have 100,000 people who are following you.
Yeah.
It was...
And working for you for free, dedicating their entire rest of their lives to working for you for free.
How did that idea come about?
So I think in 1967, L. Ron Hubbard started the Sea Organization. And there's like the real reason it happened, and then there's the story he told the Scientologist.
The
real
tax reason?
He had to get, governments were looking for him. Governments were looking from various lawsuits where Scientology was being prosecuted by various government agencies. Agencies were trying to find him and serve him. So he was a master mariner. He had a license to sail any ship on any sea. And he's like, all right, bitches, we're getting on a boat and we're going to sea.
Yeah.
And he rounded up some of his most loyal followers and says, we're creating this thing called the Sea Project. It later became the Sea Organization. It's not like the whole thing started out with, hey, sign a $1 billion contract or whatever. It was the story was basically that because L. Ron Hubbard has a lot of conspiracy theories that that explains Scientology's role in the world and why it's under so much attacks and everything, right? That Scientology is basically performing the role that Neo performed in the Matrix, right? Only Scientology can unplug everyone from the Matrix.
Okay.
And the governments of the world are like the robots in the Matrix that are running around trying to keep everybody plugged in. So Scientology poses an existential threat to the people that really control planet Earth.
Hence the constant persecution.
Exactly. Through big pharma and big psych and the media and the governments and the bankers, they're all working together and they're all terrified of Scientology and they're all terrified of L. Ron Hubbard. So that's why he's like, we're going to go off on the boat. We're going to go off to sea in international waters where we can practice Scientology, develop more upper levels in Scientology without the interference from governments. And if you believe L. Ron Hubbard, that's a good story.
It's a compelling story for sure.
Yeah. And Scientologists think they're saving the world. Like saving the world, and not in a spiritual sense, like someone might go, oh, like if you're a Christian might go, I want to save you. Like, I want to keep you from burning in hell from all eternity. I want you to be saved. No, they literally think they're saving the world. Whether it's...
Well, the metrics that they get pitched at those huge galas that they do are fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm not great at math, but I don't think the people that came up with the metrics are either.
That's right, because there's no way any of that math could ever be true.
I mean, even again, at it, like you skim the top with a razor blade and you just peel back the first level of the onion, you're like, hold on a second. Like X number of people doing this, X result, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And, and like we're in Montana. There's no Scientology in all of Montana.
And all of it?
In all of it. There's zero.
When you're not going to see it because you probably already got in your bags. At the luggage area, there is a life coach, and her email, it's like Thetan something. I've looked. No, dude, I've looked it up because, like I said, I looked at it. I'm sitting there, and it was like she's a spiritual life coach, and I clicked on it. It's 100% Scientology.
Okay, so you found the one Scientologist in Montana, but there's no Scientology org in Montana.
Yeah, well, it was only because she had her email address up there, and it hopped out at me. Right. And I'm like, hold on a second, and so I'm waiting for my bag, and it was like, bing.
That's incredible.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, Scientology auditors these days have starting to call themselves life coaches.
I could see why. It seems like Scientology is not what I would say under the microscope, but it's certainly on the fringes of the spotlight, and it gets swung over to them from time to time.
Yeah. Well, this kind of gets into the conversation of, is Scientology a religion, and why do they call themselves a religion? Because the lower level Scientology courses in auditing, it really is more akin to life coaching than anything else. If you didn't have to be a religion to be tax exempt, or at least have the kind of tax exemption Scientology wants, they wouldn't bother calling themselves a religion. L. Ron Hubbard, in the early days of writing about Scientology, was very anti-religious. He was like, don't ever let anyone say we're a religion. And then he's like, wait, tax
exempt,
walk that back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Scientologists are not religious people. Like, they don't believe in a God. They don't believe in a heaven or a hell. They don't believe in, a belief in a supreme being is inconsistent with what Scientologists believe.
Do Scientologists consider Scientology to be a religion?
Yes. And I could make a pretty good argument that they are a religion. It really depends on what you mean by the word. And I think technically, if you believe in an immortal spiritual, in an immortal spirit, and you believe that your special process will rehabilitate the native state of that immortal spirit, and that's a truly held belief, I think there's a pretty good argument to be made there that gets into the realm of religion.
I would agree.
Now, it's a loaded conversation because religious people will get offended at the idea that a cult like Scientology could be called the same thing that their thing is called. So it becomes a loaded conversation.
Yeah.
But I tend to make the argument that Scientology is a religion. That it's still bullshit. It's still a cult. I don't think it should have tax exempt status. But they do genuinely believe in an immortal spirit, and they do genuinely believe that the process of auditing is how you rehabilitate your native powers. Who's to say that's not religious? I don't know. I don't think being bullshit doesn't make you a religion. I don't think destroying families disqualifies you from being a religion. I don't think defrauding people of money disqualifies you from being a religion. And that's the thing. I just don't think the word means something special.
So the criteria for a cult, right? There's like 5 of them. Charismatic leader, a uniquely identifying type of dress, language or vernacular that only makes sense to people inside of the group, special meeting place. And one of the largest connecting things in cults is dietary restrictions and requirements.
Oh, is that right?
Michael and I do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It fucking meets all 5 of those. Yeah. I mean, we go and we have our coach. We wear our gi. Where do we go meet? We go meet at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu place. We use terms that other people are like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? And if you eat acai bowls afterwards, you immediately get better. But
I train jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah, but so it's like, but
four stripe blue belt right here.
Nice.
Oh, you guys have to fight because he's a 4-stripe blue belt as well.
Yeah.
But it meets the same criteria as a cult. So does the Catholic Church. So does the Mormon Church. So you can view it negatively, or we can just all agree that, hey, maybe all of these things could potentially be susceptible to that type of thing.
Yeah.
And now, I don't believe that all of them are hurting people.
Right.
But not all of them are helping people either.
Right.
And I think that's the discussion. Like, people are like, oh, jiu-jitsu is a cult. I'm like, I know. Like, I used to work for CrossFit. Guess what? That's a fucking cult too. You know, same 5 criteria. You know what I mean? If you put it in that lens, it's like, oh shit, what do I do in my life that could not be considered a cult real fast here?
And then the problem is because something that is as fun and non-hurtful as jiu-jitsu can be a cult. In fact, Steve Hassan is a renowned cult expert. And he says he's a part of the scuba diving cult. And Mac is a cult, and the military can be a cult. And I go,
100%.
well, the problem is the word starts to lose any meaning whatsoever.
Yeah.
So totally aside from the academic definition of a cult, I go, as long as Scientology is enforcing the destruction of families, to me, they're a cult. There's also one other aspect a friend of mine reminded me of, which is just you have the secretive nature. If they will not tell you what they truly believe until you're ready, it's that secret knowledge. It's the one thing that does differentiate Scientology from the world's mainstream religions. You ask a Christian what they believe, they're going to tell you. They're not going to spin you a story. They'll give you their book. It's all here. You're a Scientologist is literally, even a Scientologist who's already seen all the confidential levels isn't even allowed to talk about those levels with another Scientologist who's already seen all the confidential levels. You're not allowed to discuss the material.
So even if there's 2 people at the top of the bridge, they can't talk about...
They cannot.
Oh, that's fascinating. Do people talk about what level they are at inside of Scientology? Are you allowed to say that?
Oh, yeah. Where are you at on the bridge? It's
Okay.
a very common question. It's like 2 dogs sniffing each other's buttholes.
I was going to say, it's a very interesting dick measuring contest.
Where are you at on the bridge, bro?
Do people look at the higher levels up on the OTs as just like these revered individuals?
Yeah. Even if you can see they're total losers in life, you're like, oh, he's OT8.
Aaron,
he
I
must
need
be
you
a
to take
special
this.
kind of
I
loser.
need you to take this more seriously. Okay? Fuck. Okay, so you said that you think L. Ron Hubbard was a believer till his death.
Yeah.
How about David Miscavige?
I think he's a believer in his own way. I think he believes in the structure, like the basic bones, the thetan, the immortal spiritual being, and whatever. Except I think he thinks LRH screwed up, and he's having to come and fix LRH's messes.
What's he been able to do? Like, is he actually empowered to change Scientology now that he's the head of it?
Technically, yes, but the Scientology belief system precludes people from changing anything LRH created. So
Ooh, that's a catch-22.
So the way you do it is you convince everybody that you found out what L. Ron Hubbard really wanted done, and other people had screwed it up and non-complied and altered the compliance and everything. And he, for the first time, is the one fixing it. He's changed so much of the stuff L. Ron Hubbard had done. But he's convinced Scientologists it's what L. Ron Hubbard really wanted, and we're doing it now for the first time. It's typical cult manipulation stuff.
What does his day-to-day look like? What do you think he spends his days doing?
So I've asked Mike Rinder this question. And by the way, I'm sure Mike would love to come up here and chat with you sometime.
If you could connect us, that'd be fantastic.
100%.
I would do... Michael, are you in to do just a year of Scientology episodes? Like, just fucking straight?
Let's do it.
Oh, then you'd love Mark Headley as well. Mark Headley was audited by Tom Cruise himself.
You shut the fuck up. Tom Cruise is the dude on the other side of the email.
Yeah, Tom Cruise did his auditor training at Scientology's secretive international base up in Gilman Hot Springs, California. And Mark Headley was one of the Sea Org members working on the base at the time, and Mark had not had really any auditing. So they're like, oh, we need Tom Cruise to have a fresh person who can audit from the bottom of the bridge, and he can audit Mark. So yeah, Tom Cruise audited Mark Headley.
I don't feel like Mr. Cruise does a lot of auditing.
No.
I was going to say.
So you can do auditor training just so that you're trained on how to be an auditor, even if you're not going to be a professional auditor. Scientologists are encouraged to do Scientology auditor training.
Okay.
They say it helps you in life. It helps you be an executive. It helps you be a good parent. It helps you do all this stuff. So anyway, yeah, you love chatting
auditor.
with Mike and Mark.
I'll talk to them all. Yeah. I would love to.
Yeah.
Okay. So
but his day-to-day, he's so senior in the organization, he honestly can do whatever the hell he wants.
Does he answer to anybody inside of Scientology?
No.
Okay.
No. There's weird ways to answer the question. Like sometimes he's playing video games. There's not a Scientologist in the world who would believe that. Like as a Sea Org member, you are working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. I mean, some Sea Org members are lucky to get 1 day off a year. And when I mean 1 day, like there's no weekends, there's no nights. You're working from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. The idea that David Miscavige is chilling in his apartment playing video games, people are going to think that a Scientologist would go, that's just a vicious lie. No, this is the type of life Miscavige lives that is different than the rank and file of your average Sea Org member, even your average Sea Org member at the highest echelons of Scientology. Even your highest Sea Org member is only making $50 a week. Except Miscavige, who's paying himself a 6-figure salary and just banking it all. And it's not like he's paying for anything with that salary. Scientology provides everything for him. So his day-to-day, but your question was his day-to-day. Mike Rinder's really going to be the one to give a good answer to that question. But I have asked him, and he basically says there's all these sort of silos of projects that are occurring in Scientology. And Miscavige sets himself up where all of these things sort of have to go through him for final approval. So on the one hand, he makes it so that he has to approve everything, but then he also uses that as the reason, oh, look, you guys are overworking me. You guys are, making my everything falls on me. I have to do everything. It's like, well, yeah, but you're the one who asks that nothing can be done without your final approval. So whether it's Scientology's real estate fundraising sort of scheme, or whether it's his latest technical training evolution on the new way to train auditors, or whether it's a new training program to train new command teams for the 150 Scientology organizations. He'll put people in charge of these things, but then he'll be the final approval point. So basically any day that he wakes up, he can wake up and he doesn't really have a schedule. His schedule, he doesn't answer to anybody. His schedule is his own.
Yeah.
So he'll go, okay, let me see what the submissions are today on the real estate stuff, and then I'll tell everyone that it's all bullshit and restart it. And like, fuck. I mean, I feel bad because every story I tell about David Miscavige is going to sound negative and derogatory, and at some point you're like, well, it can't be all bad all the time, can it? And you're like, to some degree, it does seem like it's kind of all bad all the time. That's sort of reflected in the state of Scientology, which is steadily shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And this is something I really like to point out, is that when you look at how dedicated Sea Org members are and how dedicated Scientologists are, you have to treat them very badly to make them choose to leave Scientology.
Yeah.
And if Miscavige just treated people 10% better, I swear to God, I don't think anybody would leave Scientology. I don't think anybody would leave Scientology.
Does he have any reason to treat people poorly, or is he just an asshole?
When you say reason, what do you mean?
I mean, I guess I actually don't even know. As I said that, I was thinking in my head, is there ever a reason to treat people poorly? Is he just an asshole, so he chooses to treat people that way?
I never worked with him.
Yeah.
I've never even actually had a conversation with him. I didn't grow up with him, but Mike Rinder did. And even though people who knew Miscavige as a child will say, or as a teenager when he started working for Scientology, he was always a real dick. It does seem that over time, as he's had more power and as the checks on his power have been removed, his personality has gotten worse, his behavior has gotten worse, his treatment of people has gotten worse.
That's not uncommon. You get somebody who has like a little Napoleon complex, and then you give him some authority or perceived authority, he can get out of control really fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like he might just be predispositioned to treat people incredibly poorly.
He probably is predispositioned in that direction. You also in Scientology have kind of a management paradigm where L. Ron Hubbard says, if a statistic is going down, it's never just because it's going down. Someone's making it go down. So and there's consequences to that. So Hubbard says that so let's take total Scientology membership.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not just that trends are changing in the world and people are less spiritual and da-da-da-da-da. Someone is very specifically responsible for making that number go down. So in Scientology, you have to find out who it is. And then there's consequences. So the only measurement in Scientology of whether someone is doing their job correctly is if their stat is going up. I think this has something to do with Miscavige's behavior towards others. Because in order to justify why Scientology stats continue to go down, he has to constantly be looking for the bad guy that's making it happen. It can never be him.
I was going to say, does he have any mirrors in his office?
But you see, it creates a weird situation where if he were to admit that the stats were going down and admit that had something to do with him, that would be the end. He can't. His ability to retain power is dependent on people thinking he's someone who raises stats.
Who, in the event that something, or when eventually when he passes, who would step into his place in Scientology?
There's no specific succession plan. At this point, it would probably be his wife, Shelly, that no one's seen in a while.
You put a video out about that recently, talking about how that would be actually normal, though. Do you want to unpack that a little bit about how, for some reason, it would be not abnormal to not see your spouse for 15 years?
Absolutely.
Fuck.
Absolutely.
Because my wife was in Canada for like 5 days last week, and it was incredibly abnormal. I fucking hated it. And she got back. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you are back.
Yeah. So in the Sea Org, well, we referenced before how it's, I want to say 24/7, 365, but you do get to sleep. I mean, your job is your life. There's no such thing as life-work balance. Like, when I say no time off, I'm being quite literal. Okay. Your marriage is just an inconvenient truth in the Sea organization. All that means, being married to someone, all that means is, one, you're allowed to have sex, because you're not allowed to have sex without being married in the Sea Org.
I'm sure it just never happens then, too.
But people get in a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah.
For some reason.
I'm sure young men and women follow that rule to the T.
Well, young women in the Sea Org get married after knowing each other for like a week for this very reason.
I've had to talk Michael out of this several times.
And you'll see this is, I'm leading to the Shelly answer. So being married simply means there's someone you can have sex with. It means you get your own room instead of living in a dorm. And that's all it means. People don't even go off and have honeymoons. I got married to my wife without ever meeting her family in the Sea Org. Me and my wife got married in the Sea Org. Okay. So if you have a spouse, if you're a Sea Org executive and you're married, and you're the type of executive that would be going to organizations around the world and, I don't know, doing inspections or whatever, your wife's not going with you. Your wife has a job to do. Your wife's job is just as important as your job, and your jobs are separate. So there's no such, like, being married to someone means nothing in the Sea organization. Now, because Miscavige has a small orbit of people, and he doesn't want people in his orbit to really have many connections to people outside of his orbit, even in the Sea organization, even in the management levels, right? Like, if you work in David Miscavige's organization and your spouse works for a lower level Scientology organization, you are encouraged to divorce them.
Really?
Yes. If your spouse is qualified to move up to RTC, the organization he works for, that's fine. But if not, you are pressured to divorce them. So he wants people in his circle to stay in his circle, because he doesn't want anyone chit-chatting about what he's doing outside of the circle. Okay. Shelly Miscavige, her job in the Sea organization was to be David Miscavige's assistant. That's the only reason anybody ever saw Shelly Miscavige outside of the international base ever. She went everywhere with him. It was her job. So, and she was on that post for, I don't know, 15 years or something. And then something happened. It was around 2005-ish. I always get it wrong. It's like 4 or 5 or 6. It was before Tom Cruise's wedding. Miscavige's behavior was getting increasingly erratic. One of the roles that Shelly played was sort of as a buffer between Miscavige and his craziness and everyone else. She would try to smooth things over when he upset someone or attacked someone and stuff like that. And Miscavige had assigned the staff at the Int base just some impossible tasks just to keep them busy and make them feel like shit for not being able to do it. And he left the base for a little bit, and Shelly stayed behind, and Shelly helped the staff do the thing Miscavige had tasked them with. And so when he came back, she basically presented it to him. And he took that as being like, oh, you switched sides. You've sided with them instead of me by trying to help them do the thing I told them to do. Okay. So Miscavige basically, not just for that reason, removed her from her post.
Assigned her a new job, essentially.
Exactly. At a different base. So one of the things of Miscavige's personality is that if you're in trouble with him and he doesn't like you, he doesn't want to run into you. He doesn't want to see you. Right? I've heard stories of him kicking somebody out of the Int base and sending them to LA. And then that person gets sent to Clearwater for training. And then he ends up going to Clearwater. Miscavige ends up going to Clearwater for an inspection and runs into that person. It's like, what are you doing here? get out of here. Go back to LA. Like, he's just really stupid and petty like that.
Fuck.
Right. Okay, so if Shelly, someone who was so prominent in his circle, and remember, we're talking about the international base in Gilman Hot Springs, California. Scientologists in the world don't even know the location of this base. Sea Org members don't even know the location of this base unless
So is
they've
it
been there.
like super higher echelon people inside of Scientology that go there?
It's supposed to be the most senior managers in all of Scientology are supposed to be located on this base.
Like full time, they live there?
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, and there's a Scientology's movie production studio is also located on that base. And so I said Shelly, someone who had been so prominent in Miscavige's circle. When she's removed from her post, he can't just have her putzing around the international base doing jobs where everyone can see her and talk to her and whatever, because she might talk shit about David Miscavige. So he's got to send her to another base. And it's got to be a secluded base. It's got to be a remote base where it's only her and a handful of other Sea Org members who work there. So that's where she is. Now, someone could go, well, that sounds like a prison. I mean, if you're being imprisoned there, then it's a prison. But where she's at isn't a prison. It's one of the most senior Scientology organizations in the world. Sea Org, your average Sea Org member would kill to get promoted to the base where she's working and live a life where all they have to do is watch this underground vault where LRH's works are stored. Like, she has a job that requires her to do nothing.
Why doesn't he just divorce her?
Because if he divorced her, then she would go get married to someone else. She might talk smack about him to that person.
Do you think he ever loved her?
Yeah, I think so, probably. To the extent he's capable of that.
I was going to say, because it's a weird balance, right? If he is a true believer in what Scientology is and what it's about, it would be almost like two competing ideas to make decisions based off the love of your significant other.
Yeah. I mean, we can go really deep and go, what is love really? But he probably loved her as much as he's capable of loving anyone other than Tom Cruise. But to the point of like not seeing someone for 15 years, even in Scientology, yes, it's weird.
Yeah.
But what I've explained in some of the videos is that it's not weird that people would stop seeing her. It's not true that no one's like not seen by whom. Not seen by people out of Scientology. Yeah, nobody out of Scientology would ever see Shelly Miscavige. Nobody outside of Scientology would have hardly ever seen Shelly Miscavige, even when she was his assistant. And there are other Scientology executives who've disappeared and not been seen for 15 years. I say disappeared. Scientologists haven't heard from them. I'm not saying they've literally, the police couldn't find them. So, and so with the Shelly thing, I think sometimes what I say about this gets misunderstood as nobody should ever worry about Shelly. And that's not really what I'm saying. If you haven't heard from someone for a bunch of years, there's nothing wrong with wondering if she's okay. But the fact that she's no longer at Miscavige's side, doesn't attend events, isn't seen in public, isn't seen at Scientology events, in the world of the Sea Org, that's totally normal. And that even Mike Rinderen will tell you that.
Yeah, it may not make sense to an outside perspective, but
Right.
yeah, if that's the world that they grew up in. How was it growing up in Scientology?
So it was weird, but when you're that young, you don't quite realize how weird it is. I remember, because I went to public school until the 7th grade. And I remember knowing that whatever my mom was doing, I didn't know how to describe it, but I knew I didn't want to be asked about it. Mm-hmm. I knew it was not normal. Like I just have some very specific memories of having a lot of anxiety, being in like the 3rd grade and all the kids are sitting in a circle. And for some reason, everyone's going around the circle talking about what their parents do. I don't know why anyone would do this exercise in school. And I'm thinking, oh God, I hope the bell rings before they get to me. Cause I don't know. My mom works at the Dianetics Center. I don't know what Dianetics is.
Fuck.
And at that young age, Scientology was really just something my mom was doing. And we kids and a bunch of other kids of Scientologists would just go into the nursery and wreak havoc, and, I probably did my first Scientology course at about 9 years old, and it was just like a communication course.
Is that normal? A normal age to expose people to?
That's pretty normal. I mean, if you can read, you can start doing Scientology. And again, even that course was something we were doing because we had to. And this is why some of my Scientology memories have like two weird components to it. Is there's the component where I'm focused on the things I got from the course, and then those memories sort of kind of ignore the fact that I was being forced to do the course in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially when you're that young, like you're going to do whatever the hell your parents make you do. And you're going to do it as best as you can. And so even when I started actually working for Scientology full-time at the age of 12, sometimes when I look back on all of that, I tend to just focus on the positive and pull out the positive. But underpinning the entire thing is the fact that I shouldn't really have been doing any of that at all.
Was it your choice
at
to
that age.
start working for them full time at 12?
No, it was my mom's choice.
How did your mom, as you were growing up before the age of 12, how did she describe Scientology to you?
I don't remember her describing Scientology to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So at the age of 12, she goes, "Hey, Aaron, by the way, small course correction in our life here. Here's your contract."
Almost.
Oh, fuck.
No. So I said I was 4. I had a twin brother. He passed away in a car accident when I was like 23. So when I talk about my childhood, I'll say we, because also he did the same path that I did in Scientology. So we were 4 when she got in. 2 years later, she married a Scientologist and had a son. So I have a younger brother, 6 years younger than me. She was, and so he was a Scientologist. So it was her, him, my younger brother, me, and my twin brother. So that's 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all like a Scientology family for a while. And then they divorced, and my younger brother went off to live with his dad. Now, those early years, from like the age of 4 to the age of like maybe 9, my mom was a staff member. And then at some point, she had to leave staff because it just wasn't possible to take care of all the kids and be on staff at the same time. And so then when I was 12 is when Scientology got its tax-exempt status back. And it was a big deal. And Scientology had this campaign to hire 20 people to train to be auditors at every Scientology org. And this is when my mom was like, oh, and by the time this happened, my mom was married to a different guy who had a son and a daughter.
Also a Scientologist, I'm assuming?
Yeah, she had got him in. And we were all like doing homeschool. Like, and my mom, one of my mom's friends was in, and the friend had 2 kids. And this is all when right around the same time Scientology got its tax exempt status back. And they were on this recruit drive to hire people to train to be auditors.
Well, the war was over.
Exactly. You've seen it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
You've seen it. And so
well, let's be honest. Some of those galas that they do, they put some effort into that shit.
hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars are spent putting on those
I'd be
events.
shocked if they didn't.
I used to think those events were amazing until I saw some footage of what the Nazi events looked like, and I was like, this seems very familiar to me for some reason.
Yeah, the massive open stage with just the, like, basically Raiders of the Lost Ark shit in the middle and David Miscavige standing there.
In a specially built podium so he doesn't look like a midget.
Holy, how tall is he?
5'1".
Well, I understand why he gets along with Thomas now.
Okay, so there's this recruit drive to hire people to train auditors is date coincident with tax exempt status being earned back, and my mom and her husband and her friend and her other friend were like, oh, we can all join staff if the kids join staff too, since the kids are really the reason we're not on staff. And and that's when we were based. So it wasn't just me. It was me, my brother, my stepbrother, my stepsister, my mom's friends' 2 kids. I mean, between the 3 families, there was almost 20 of us that joined staff.
So like a instant 20 head count bump for
Yep.
Scientology right there.
Yep.
Holy shit.
And so we started, and we were still doing homeschool. So we would like wake up in the morning, we'd do homeschool until like 3 in the afternoon. And then we would all drive from South Jersey into downtown Philly to study our Scientology courses until 10 o'clock at night. Now, I have my own kids now. I've got 3 girls, 16, 14, and 12. My oldest daughter is now older than I was when I started working full-time for Scientology. I mean, my youngest daughter is now as old as I was. I wouldn't even let my oldest daughter, I would never let her do a quarter of the shit I was doing back then.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids are in bed before 10. I was 12. At 10, we were just finishing up study for the night. And and so that's really how it started. And that started with the question, okay, did you guys want to do it or were you made to do it? It's one of those things. My mom gets really sensitive about this. She's like, you guys wanted to do it. She gets really sensitive when I talk about this stuff.
Is she still a Scientologist?
She's not in Scientology, but she still believes in it.
Okay.
And she goes, you guys wanted to do it. I go, kids, what does that even mean? When you don't consent, like you want, I mean, you could take that statement and do a lot of stuff with that.
What if you wanted to get a face tattoo? You're like,
yeah.
You know?
It's like, yeah, we wanted to do it after you told us we should, and it was a great idea, and there would be rewards if we did, and if we couldn't, then you couldn't. And it was like, you put us on this path, we figured out how to succeed. Don't then blame us for being on the path.
Yeah.
You know. And I say succeed because we sort of excelled in what we were doing in the world of Scientology. And so I know I keep kind of going back to this point of I tend to look at all my past experience in this area and talk about it in a relatively positive way. And that's probably just because I'm a relatively positive person. And I feel like I pretty much managed to sort of take away the best things, learn the best lessons, come out unscathed more so than others throughout my whole Scientology experience. And maybe that's why I'm a little more willing to talk about it than most. You know, most people would probably get sick of talking about Scientology as much as I talk about it. But I can tell you this, even though I feel like I came out okay, never in a million years would I put my kids on that path. Never in a million years.
How did it get to the point where you realized you needed to leave? Because there's a lot. I mean, so how long have you been out?
Officially 2014, that process, I would say, started in 2009.
But you had kids while you were still a Scientologist then.
Yeah. So in 2006, we had our first daughter. And I said I met my wife in the Sea Organization.
Yeah.
And we were in the Sea Org in LA when we got pregnant. And literally, I had to go to. Now, you're military. Do they use the term Master at Arms in the military?
Yes.
MAA?
Mm-hmm.
And is it someone who's responsible for like justice and ethics and stuff? Or is it a judicial thing?
It's not a judicial thing necessarily. So we have there's the JAG Corps for that. The Judge Advocate General is going to be like the judicial, both prosecutor and any like litigation or litigious type thing in the military is going to be handled by the JAG. The Master at Arms is kind of like God. And again, I can only speak about the community that I came from, so the greater military at large. The Master at Arms terminology was like, I want to say like the mechanic, for lack of a better words. It was
Car mechanic?
not like car mechanic, but it was the kind of the department that made everything work. They fixed stuff. They ordered stuff. They made sure you know what I mean? It was like, it's not a catch-all phrase, but also it was very broad. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense.
Okay.
It sounds like what you're describing, like there was no ethical or moral association with the Master at Arms inside of the military. It does sound like they might have lifted that term, but I think it means something different in the military for sure.
So L. Ron Hubbard took all the Sea Org terminology from the Navy.
Yep. That's a
And-
mistake.
In a Scientology organization, the person you get in trouble with is the ethics officer. So, like in a company, you might you need to go see HR. In Scientology, it's you need to go see the ethics officer.
Yep.
In a Sea Org organization, the ethics officer is called the MAA.
Okay.
So when we found out for sure that my wife was pregnant in the Sea Org, I literally went to the morning muster. And the morning muster got out. I went to the MAA and I said, Heather's pregnant and we're not getting an abortion. I literally had to say that. Heather's pregnant, we're not getting an abortion. And so that was our way out of the Sea Org. That was our easy way out of the Sea Org because they're like, they don't want pregnant people walking around.
Yep.
Now, if you just go to them and say, I want to leave, well, you're in for probably 12 months of humiliating labor and interrogations. But if you're like, we're pregnant, they're like, get the hell out of here as fast as possible. So let me answer your question with respect to that point. Because when we left the Sea Organization, we weren't leaving Scientology. And so I'll take your question. How'd you get to the point where you wanted to leave the Sea organization? It was such a horrible, miserable existence. Mainly because everyone is constantly trying to find who's the reason why things aren't going well. Instead of just, hey, we're all here, let's do the best that we can. It's, we were trying to meet this goal, we fell short of it, someone's head has to go on a pike for that. It just got to the point where even as a true believer, as a Sea Org member, I wasn't getting any value or fulfillment from the job that I was doing. And I wasn't getting, no one's saying, hey, you're doing a great job. You're treated like a piece of shit. And eventually that just gets old.
Yeah.
And eventually I was just like, I got better shit to be doing. I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, that's just pretty simple. So even when I wanted to leave the Sea organization, it was still only because the experience wasn't rewarding. It wasn't like, oh, I don't believe in Scientology anymore. And so we both left the Sea organization. My wife had been in for 14 years. I had been working for Scientology since I was 12, but I was only in the Sea organization for the last 4 of those years. So then we moved to Clearwater to raise a family because her whole family was in Clearwater. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until, that was 2006. 3 years later in 2009, the Tampa Bay Times wrote a series of articles called The Truth Rundown, where they were interviewing people like Mike Rinder, who had been high-level Scientology executives, known by everyone in the world, and who not only left the Sea Org, but had left Scientology altogether and were now speaking out for the first time. And reading those articles, and it's weird to say this, right? Because you're reading an article in the paper and you're like, why is it that reading something had more of an impact on you than just experiencing it? How come experiencing what you experienced didn't make you want to leave Scientology, but reading about it in the newspaper made you consider it? And it was like, because what I was reading in the newspaper was stuff I'd never known. And it gets to that we were talking about earlier of siloing of information. The international base where David Miscavige works is supposed to be in Scientology like a utopia where everyone's a trained Scientologist and you're not dealing with any of the merchants of fear and merchants of chaos and public complaining that their auditing didn't make them feel as good as they hoped, right? It's supposed to be this perfect place. And I'd never been there. And all of the stupid, horrible shit I experienced in Scientology could sort of be explained away and justified by going, well, it's probably much better up there. But what we didn't know is that it was much, much worse up there.
Sounds like it.
It was much worse the closer you got to Miscavige. And so when I'm reading these articles and I'm reading information from people I know, people who are credible, people who I know are true believers, people who I know worked with L. Ron Hubbard, and they're like, yeah, David Miscavige beats the shit out of people, and half of management has been removed from their posts, and hundreds of millions of dollars are being squandered here and squandered there. And you're like, what? It just caused me to sort of reframe everything I thought I knew. And that was just the first crack in the dam. It's not like I read some newspaper articles and I was like, oh shit, I got to leave Scientology. That was the first time I was like, oh, wait.
Did Scientology try to keep that information out of your hands? Like, how did they address that series in the newspaper?
Well, they can't keep it out of your hands, but they do interrogate people to find out if you've read it.
Through the auditing?
Well, auditing is a special kind of interrogation, but the MAA can just call you in at any time and give you an interview on the e-meter.
Full sweat down.
Basically say, spill your guts. You're not allowed, there's no civil procedure, there's no civil rights in Scientology. You're not allowed, you have no rights to privacy. If an ethics officer asks you a question, you're not allowed to not answer it. I mean, because remember, and his power comes from the fact that it's like, you don't cooperate with me, we kick you out of Scientology. We kick you out of Scientology, you lose all your family and your friends and your kids and your job and everything. So Scientology wields an incredible amount of power over its members. And so, I mean, even to this day, if someone gets an interview at a Scientology org in Clearwater, they get asked if they've seen any of my videos.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you have to be the
Mike
bane of their
Renders.
existence at this point.
And I'm right in Clearwater. You know that. I live in Clearwater. Yeah. And so,
Which is an interesting move in and of itself.
yeah. Well, I'm like, why should I leave? They can leave.
So, okay, so you're at the Sea Org, and then you left, so you went to staff, essentially?
Nope. We go from Sea Org. Once you go Sea Org, you can't go back to staff.
Okay.
You just go public.
So you became, okay, so you're living in I want to say a civilian neighborhood.
Yeah,
Are you
normal
living,
life.
Are you living surrounded by Scientologists at that point? Do you have a mix of social contacts that are Scientologists, non-Scientologists?
Almost all Scientologists at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. Public Scientologists, especially in Clearwater, will tend to have almost all Scientology.
That makes sense.
It's just the nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but so you don't, and so then are you?
So
can you pursue?
I'm working for a Scientologist. My
Okay.
wife's working for a Scientologist. My kids are going to a Scientology school. All of our friends are Scientologists. Her family members are Scientologists. My family members are Scientologists. And so
So you left the Sea Org, but that's about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I still believed. I absolutely still believed. But then I start reading these newspaper articles. And then Mike Rinder started a blog. This other guy, Marty Rathbun, started a blog. And these are the guys who two of the most senior people
Yeah.
to have ever worked in Scientology, either under L. Ron Hubbard or under David Miscavige. And they're just spilling all the tea. And I was actually very excited. I was like, damn, this is exciting, learning all this new shit. I was like, woo, let's see what they're talking about today. And so what's interesting is that the more and more I stopped believing in Scientology, that was never accompanied by a desire to actually leave. It's a little weird, right?
That's a crazy statement.
I was perfectly happy. I'd be like, I'm going to stay and I'm going to be your spy. It's like I had no high school education. I mean, meaning I wasn't like, there was no part of me that was like, ooh, I'm going to make my way in the world. I'm going to bust out of this bubble and reinvent my entire life and start from scratch. It was never part of the plan. It was never part of the plan. It was, I really was not thinking wasn't putting a lot of thought into things. Things were just happening.
How free were you to talk with your wife about your changing beliefs?
You can't do that.
Fuck.
Yeah.
So you're here having, it wouldn't be an existential crisis, I guess, but you're having this revelation and belief, and you cannot tell your wife.
Which sounds crazy, but I was already used to that.
Yeah.
I was already used to that, I mean, and there are some crazy, crazy mindsets, ways of thinking and believing that it's hard to imagine that people could get to those places. Like when my wife and I were in the Sea Org, and we sort of knew we were in different organizations. She could see I was not having fun. She was but she couldn't really ask me about it. And I wasn't really going to say anything about it. But there was one maybe 15-second conversation where I was like, the only reason I'm not leaving is because I don't want to get a divorce. And she said, well, if you leave, I'll leave. Even saying that was a huge violation. That was like a 10-second conversation. We never had a follow-up.
Fuck.
Okay. Now, certain physical realities caused my wife to get pregnant, but that was sort of a don't ask, don't tell situation. We never sat down and was like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start a family and we're going to get out of here. No, we would get in trouble for having that conversation, and we both knew it. And so we just didn't even have that conversation. Those are some pretty major decisions being made there without even talking to each other about it.
It's an interesting system, too, where you have people that can't have that level of conversation even in private with their significant other. Because I'm assuming, again, it goes back to what Scientology requires of you, of how they would find out. They would basically drag it out of you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And my wife was in a senior level organization, and they take their ethics much more seriously. So if she were to wind up on the meter and just be asked, have you spoken to Aaron about leaving? And she said yes, we would have been separated immediately. We would have each been separated and put under watch. I mean, it's hard to imagine shit like this happening in the United States by an organization that calls itself a religion.
Yeah.
But this is the level of control. Like, there's no such thing as due process. Due process. That's a joke. When I came out of the Sea Org, it took me quite a while to understand what civil rights were about. Scientology has this idea only criminals demand privacy, because what do you have to hide? I mean, that's like really ingrained into you. Like, what? You don't have the right to not. Your birthing in the Sea Org is searched multiple times a week. That's just like normal. You're like, what? Guns? What do they want? Guns?
Yeah, what are they looking
Do you
for?
have letters from family? Do you have a DVD player? Do you have a movie? Do you have a... You might go,
How do they treat cell phones these days? Smartphones.
Sea Org members, for the most part, can't have cell phones.
Interesting.
More and more they're getting them, but the security, Sea Org security, will install a software on them where they can track all the keystrokes on those phones.
Yeah, that's normal. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Fuck. It's absolutely insane.
I'm going to put that on Michael's phone. What do you have to hide, Michael?
Yeah, and they'll put filters so that nothing... So not only do they track your keystrokes, but it's got a filter so nothing that has the word Scientology.
Yeah, they're compartmentalizing and channeling information to you that they want you to see versus what you may want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, the technology age really blows the skirt up on some of these organizations to a level they can't control once they get it in their hands.
Yeah.
I mean, they can put whatever filters they want to. I've watched children get through every single filter that parents have put on.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I'll just open up a browser inside of a browser inside of a browser and look at titties. I'm like, you're 6.
Right.
Congratulations on also your tech savvy and also your searchability. Like,
That's right. And I'll tell you,
so as the Sea Org, you're living on site 24 hours in that bubble.
Mm-hmm.
When you guys left, now you're in the civilian world, in air quotes, but surrounded by other Scientologists. So you said you were working for a Scientologist.
that's right.
Your wife was as well. Mm-hmm. So you left, but also there's still a lot of eyeballs.
Oh, yeah. And people are Scientologists have this thing where they report on each other. They report on each other. So I mentioned the ethics officer, the MAA. The MAA plays an incredibly important role in the Scientology story and how they control behavior and thought and emotion. Because every time you start a new Scientology course, you have to go to the MAA and get an interview. And that interview is a searching, metered ethics interview. It is an interrogation about you and your friends and your family and any source of negativity or criticism concerning Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, and David Miscavige. And you will throw people under the bus just to get out of the damn interview.
Will it go on until the person says it's over, that interview?
Oh, yeah, the ethics officer says when it's over.
So you have no idea how long you're even going to be in there.
That's right.
That's rough in and of itself.
Yeah. And, once you're accustomed to this as a Scientologist, it becomes normal. Ratting on your friends and family is normal. It's not considered ratting. You're considered you're helping them. You're helping them because now the ethics officer can help them put their ethics in, and having your ethics in increases your survival. So so I'm saying ratting because that's the word we use. That's not how Scientologists consider it. It's considered you're being a good Scientologist by reporting to the reporting. I mean, I wrote hundreds of reports on my coworkers, my juniors, my seniors, other people, as a Scientologist.
As you were writing them, were you like, Aaron, you're fucking awesome. You're helping these people.
I was like,
is that
such
truly
a
what
good-
you thought? Or were you like, I just want the spotlight off of me?
No. I truly, I was a Sea Org member who did believe in what we were doing and thought that people who were not being good Sea Org members were,
That's fine.
were making my job harder, and I didn't appreciate it. Fuck. Yeah.
All right. So you transition, you're out in Clearwater. You see these first newspaper articles. Do you remember, was there any one thing that kind of shattered the belief where you realized that, like, I don't believe this anymore, or was it buildup?
It was buildup, but one of the major things, you got that Bridge to Total Freedom?
Oh, fuck yeah. Let's get back on the bridge. Like I said, he's at level 4.
Working my way up.
I subsidize his courses as part of his camera switching.
And
One of the many benefits.
if he breaks his contract with you, he owes you
Yeah.
all the money back for the auditing.
I had him sign a $2 billion year contract to work here. So,
That's great.
all right, where are we at?
Go up to the upper OT levels above 8.
What's the difference between the left and the right here?
The right is the auditing, and the left is the courses.
Okay.
Is the auditor training. So you see it says OT1 through OT8.
Yep.
Good. Now it goes up to 15. The only thing that's ever been released publicly is OT8. You can be an OT8 in Scientology. You can't be an OT9. It's never been released.
Why doesn't Miscavige just make some shit up?
It would be very difficult. But here's what Scientologists believe. Scientologists believe that before L. Ron Hubbard died,
Yep.
he wrote up OT 9 through 15
Okay.
and gave it to international management, and it's been sitting in the vault since 1986 waiting to be released. Remember I said earlier, if someone's an OT, you sort of think like, oh, that guy's special. Even though you can see he's a total, piece of shit.
Yeah.
There are many OT8s out there.
How many would you guess?
1,000 or two.
Okay.
Like half of those people might be dead.
Yeah.
Another half might not be in Scientology anymore. But who have ever completed OT8? Maybe 1,000, not more than 2,000.
Okay.
Okay. They believe that the reason they have to work so hard and donate so much money to Scientology is that once Scientology reaches certain expansion benchmarks, OT 9 and 10 will be released. I believed that. When I would meet an OT8 who was obviously nothing special, one of the ways I explain that away is there's all those extra OT levels, bro. That's where the good stuff is. And I truly believe that.
How far did you get on the bridge?
I did almost none of it. Okay. The purification rundown is the very first step. And so the one piece of information that I was given that made me go, oh, is when people who I knew would know said, there's no upper OT levels. There's no OT 9 and 10. That's been a lie from day one. I was like,
so that's no.
That'd be like a Christian being told, wait, there's not really a heaven. It'd be the same thing. It'd be like, no, heaven was just, we think is there, but not we pretty much already know.
It's kind of ideologically shattering for somebody to say something like that.
Well, yeah, because Scientology, even though I said at the lower levels, is really just a self-help thing.
Yeah.
That's not why people stay in Scientology. It's not supposed to be a self-help thing. It's supposed to be the way to regain your native godlike powers as a spiritual being. And they believe the way to do that is the upper unreleased OT levels. And they believe that L. Ron Hubbard left them behind when he died, because that's what David Miscavige has been saying since 1986. So
but when you find out level, you're telling me that the belief is that people have powers as like an OT8?
No, they believe that the unreleased OT levels are the ones that give you powers.
Of course.
Right. I mean, have you ever seen the TV show called The Path?
No.
You ever heard of it? Oh, okay. You got to watch it. Just tuck it away.
Consider it done.
It's basically a Scientology story. So all this other stuff, David Miscavige beating people up, that's interesting. That's sexy. That's exciting. Not earth shattering from a Scientologist perspective. Okay. You're like, okay, people behave badly, whatever. But someone goes, there are no upper unreleased OT levels. You're like, well, hold the fucking phone here. That changes some things.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, oh, well, I wish somebody would have told me that 20 years ago. Because believing that those levels existed is sort of how I explained away and justified all the other stupid, crazy shit that was my Scientology existence. It was
the reward at the
keep
end
your
of the
eye
road.
on the mountain. Of course, the mountain is the one that you're just being told is there, but you don't see it.
How long does it take somebody to get to OT8?
So if you had unlimited time and unlimited money, it would be possible from the day you first walked into a Scientology organization. You could do it in 3 or 4 years.
How much money would it cost?
Maybe $500,000.
Holy shit.
Now, it takes most people are in Scientology their whole lives and they never even get to OT3. It's just, so I don't want my answer to be misleading.
Yeah.
It would technically be possible to do the whole bridge quickly. Like, you must have heard of Grant Cardone, right?
Yes. I didn't realize until I saw one of your videos that he was a Scientologist, actually.
He's an OT8.
Is he?
Yep. And he's one of Scientology's biggest recruiters and biggest donors, which is why I mercilessly troll that criminal in my videos as often as possible.
What is it that he is doing that you consider to be criminal? I know very little about him.
He is a fraudster. Yeah.
So again, I don't know a whole lot about.
He's being investigated by the FBI.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about what he does. What I can say is I see some people. He seems to fall into, and I know nothing about the dude, never met the guy. I'm going to speak broadly. He falls into a category of people that oftentimes sell things that, you know what I mean? They live in that world. Like, if you do this, you can become me. Ecosystem.
You've perfectly described it. And whereas that's technically not illegal, it is a fraud. And someone might go, careful, fraud is a legal term. Okay, I'm using it not in the legal sense. I'm using it in the colloquial sense. That is fraud. Hey, I've got a great real estate system. Buy my course and you can become a real estate millionaire like me. Well, if you really had a system, you would just use your system and keep getting rich, you wouldn't be selling courses about it. Now, Grant Cardone isn't literally running a Ponzi scheme, but he is crossing legal boundaries. I'll say, in my opinion, he's crossing legal boundaries on how you can sell investments. He is making claims on social media that you're not allowed to make as far as guaranteeing returns. And he thought he could get away with it because the rules hadn't yet really been updated to include social media. But he's currently involved in a civil suit where what is at the heart of the suit is whether the claims he makes on social media fall under the existing regulation put in place by the SEC and specifically the FTC. So I troll Grant because of the Scientology stuff. The fact that he's kind of in this fraudster, the Tai Lopez is,
It's that well, and you know what brings it? It comes to my attention anytime somebody says, "Hey, I have a secret,
right,
and I'll sell you the secret for this much money." I'm like, "Fuck right off, dude.
Yeah,
fuck right off." How many new secrets are you gonna? I feel it's almost when I watch like, have you ever seen the Page McDojo Life, the fake martial artists? Like the senseis that get up there and they like move their shoulders and people go flying around.
Those videos are amazing.
But there's two ways you can look at it.
Yeah.
You can watch the fake sensei, which I worry about that guy, but I feel so much worse for the people who participate in that, who are the ones who are throwing themselves over and saying this person's chi blast did that to me. So there's Grant, right? In which I have personally heavy criticism of, but I feel so bad for the people that he ropes in because of where they're probably coming from in their life and I forget, I actually watched one of your videos. Again, that's how I found out. I had no idea. This dude's at the fucking tippy top of the heap, Scientology. Yeah. No idea.
In fact, we had a whole 10-minute, 15-minute conversation, me and Lex, about Grant that was edited out of the video.
Why? Probably
because I go pretty hard in the paint when I talk about Grant.
Lex, you're a pussy. Pussy.
When I finished the interview, I was like, boy, if he leaves that in, I feel like I really got away with something there. I suspected he might take it out. But here's the thing. One of the things that Grant will do, and other high-profile Scientologists like him, they'll bring you in with this motivational guru, you can be like me thing. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally, Grant will do a bait and switch and be like, hey, secretly, the real key to my success is Scientology auditing.
When does he drop that on people?
It's different relationship to relationship.
Yeah.
But that's Scientology internally promotes Grant because Grant uses his platform. He will sometimes publicly talk about Scientology, but his Scientology recruiting is usually done in private. And actually, this is why I mentioned the Lex thing, because Lex even did say, he's like, how did I not know that Grant Cardone was a Scientologist?
Because he doesn't talk about it really.
Yeah,
I found one written,
there's in his about page. There's nothing that says Scientology.
I found one written article. It might have been linked through your page, and it briefly said, it's done great things for my life, and it kind of left it at that. There's a difference, I guess, between and people are of course free to talk about their beliefs in whatever way they want to, but it's like, hey man, you're at the top of the system. Like, you kind of left that out a little bit. So, yeah, it's of course going to flavor, and again, they don't have to define, like, I've been at this for a day and I'm beginning my journey on the bridge, or like, I've already tackled this motherfucker and I'm already at the top.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between those two people.
There is a difference. And it's weird because he does publicly talk about Scientology, even in some videos online.
I had never seen it until you posted that video.
You heard of a channel, Vlad TV? He does a lot of big interviews. Vlad's kind of somehow, even though he's like a white Russian guy, he's big in the hip hop community. I don't really know the connection there, but he is. He's always involved in hip hop beefs. He does an interview with Grant Cardone where actually he hits Grant with the Xenu information. Now, when I say hits Grant already knows that information.
I was going to say, right? Because he's
OT8. You learn that on OT3. But remember what I said? You're not even allowed to talk about that shit with other Scientologists.
Did it kind of put him on his heels a little bit when he was confronted with it?
He shut it down immediately. And
really?
This is the kind of stuff I like sort of highlighting on my channel. Let's watch OT8 Grant Cardone get hit with the Xenu info on a widely viewed interview with Vlad. And
he was just like, we're done here?
No, he's like, oh, I know where you're going. I'm not here for this aliens and this. I care about you. I care about your family. I care about putting food on the table. And you're like,
Yeah,
well,
but I care
okay,
that-
but you also care about Scientology.
Yeah, I care that you believe about fucking aliens.
Anyone who tries to push Grant on this sort of like tests a little bit and then backs off very quickly.
I wonder if he would come on the show.
Oh boy, invite him. I told Lex to invite Grant. I said, look, you're never going to get a Scientologist to come on the show and talk about Scientology. I said,
Are
Lex,
they allowed to?
if it was a Scientology spokesperson, they would be allowed to.
Okay, somebody whose official job is actually speaking on their
But
behalf.
I told Lex I didn't think they would. He said, do you think I could get David Miscavige on the show? I said, you're going to get Vladimir Putin on the show 10 times over before you get David Miscavige once.
Has David Miscavige ever done a podcast like that outside of the Scientology ecosystem?
The last time Miscavige did an interview of any kind was with Ted Koppel in like 1991. I posted that on my channel. And it was a disaster from Miscavige's perspective. Ted Koppel won an Emmy Award for that interview. It was incredible.
Yeah.
But even in that interview, Koppel tried to get Miscavige to talk about some of the OT material, and Miscavige, after having a coughing fit, I've never heard that before. You have to understand, there's millions of lectures in Scientology. I've never heard the lecture you just played. He was playing some lecture of L. Ron Hubbard being like, I went out to the Van Allen belt yesterday, and the radiation was actually quite warm. I was just chilling out there getting some sun. And Miscavige was like, I've never heard that before. Every Scientologist has heard that lecture. So Miscavige was caught just bald-faced lying on national TV.
He's never going to let that happen again.
He's never going to let that happen again. Never going to let that.
And
but I told
with the
Lex.
access to information now,
That's right.
like you could actually load up a fucking dossier of shit that would be very hard for him to ignore, one,
Yeah.
and defend, two.
Right.
Yeah, that's never happening. Good
I
luck,
told Lex, I said, Lex, if you ask to interview Miscavige, you're going to come off like you're just being a dick. Just ask for them to send you any representative. And I said, and you're not going to get one. And that should be part of the story. I said, how weird is it, Lex, that someone Scientology is declared a suppressive person. I'm the one sitting here having a conversation with you, kind of making some good faith arguments for why Scientology really probably is a religion. Like, I mean, it's weird that I'm the one having that conversation.
Yeah.
I said, you'd never be able to get a Scientologist to come here and have that conversation with you, except I did say, although I'll tell you what, Grant Cardone is such a self-promoter, he might just bite the bullet and come into the lion's den and sit down and try to take that heat if he thinks it will expand his reach.
I don't think he would answer the questions.
He couldn't.
No, meaning like he would either walk out or to pull like the classic politician move where they're like, you know, what do you believe about the Second Amendment? And they're like, my favorite color is blue.
Yes.
You know, regardless of what you ask them, they tell you whatever the fuck they're going to say anyway.
That's right.
And so how do you think Scientology views Lex now? Because he was willing to have the conversation with you.
Technically, they would view him as a suppressive person.
Just because he was even willing to have a dialogue on a stage that has
But that's
an
not
audience.
all he did. He empathized with my story. He name dropped the Aftermath Foundation, which is Mike Rinder and Mark Headley, who I mentioned earlier. We started a group that helps people who are leaving Scientology. We talked about the foundation. So he didn't just have a conversation about Scientology. He sympathized with a suppressive person. Scientology calls me a suppressive person.
Yep.
And so it's not like they would consider him irredeemable. Meaning, if they thought they could win him over, they would. But the fact that he platformed me Scientology would tell other celebrities to not go on his program.
Interesting.
Unless there was some way they could finagle it behind the scenes to like they'd handled Lex. Here's what they would actually take someone they had influence in whatever circle Lex travels in. And they would task that person with speaking with Lex privately and they would call it fill the vacuum. Lex has a vacuum of information on Scientology. He doesn't have the truth, and so the vacuum sucked in information and it sucked in false data. And they'll go, you have to fill the vacuum with the true data and get fixes Lex's antagonism towards Scientology. They go, you fix the antagonism by filling the vacuum with true data. And I mean, this is how Scientology approaches any situation where someone seems to be critical of Scientology, negative towards Scientology. They try to get someone in their sphere of influence to saddle up to them and help them with some area of their life
Good luck with that.
And
with Lex.
then come
He's
in and be
fucking
like
objective.
and then be like, oh, by the way, that thing that I did that I helped you, that was Scientology. Do you want to know more? You know, like they're just trying to exercise that influence in some way. And if they thought Lex had been handled where he'd be willing to interview a Scientologist without bringing up the OT information or without talking about David Miscavige, then perhaps a Scientology celebrity would be allowed to have that conversation with him. But I said, Lex, I want you to try. I said, I want you to try just so that you don't have to just take my word for it.
Yeah.
That they won't do it.
They're in a tough spot.
So see if Grant will come on. I mean, coming all the way out here to Montana is probably...
He can come on his G650. I saw a video of him posting about his G650 that he picked up. Like, cruise on up here. The airport at Kalispell can take you. There's a get your bag at the normal place. There's a Thetan body healer. Like, we're all good, right? We're in the nest. We're in the safety place. I feel like it's a selling point now. Fuck. All right, so how did you decide you needed to leave? And then how did you talk to your wife about that?
It's not a good answer. Because in some respects, that mindset that I had where even as I was believing less and less in all of it, it was not accompanied by some desire to break out or leave the organization. I really had convinced myself that I was going to continue to just exist in this ecosystem while just like walling myself off from it and living in my own world.
Because that was the path of least resistance, or what got you to that place?
Well, path of least resistance in the sense that my wife's entire family is in this. I had a really great job. My boss was a Scientologist. And even if he seemed like maybe he didn't care about Scientology that much, his whole family were Scientologists. So there was just no part of my mentally detaching from Scientology that made me go, I'm going to completely turn my life upside down and start over. And I convinced myself I was going to be able to get away with continuing to go down this personal path while maintaining my position in the Scientology ecosystem. I was in complete denial that this was not going to work.
I was going to say, how are you going to get past the auditing?
When I said I became a public Scientologist, I really just mean that as a default, meaning if you're not a Sea Org member and you're not a staff member, you are by definition a public.
Yeah.
But it's not like I was going on course or getting auditing.
Okay. Oh, so it would have been at that point, you would have had to pursue it.
Yeah, I would have been like, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. I'm just going to do my thing. But what happened is my mom she was the first person in this whole story of my family who got kicked out of Scientology. And she got kicked out of Scientology for spreading around some negative information about David Miscavige. And when that happened, Scientology told me, well, you have to disconnect from your mom now because she's not in Scientology anymore. And I just lied to them and I said, sure, I'll do that. And I didn't really. I never disconnected from her.
That's one of the policies, too, not to interrupt you, that it's interesting. Scientology completely denies, but every person that has left talks about how the reality of it.
I know. It's stupid.
It is stupid.
And they deny it. It'll do their little, politician dance. At the underpinning their denial is them going, well, it was your choice. I'm like, well, yeah, but I made a choice based on the ultimatum you gave me.
Yeah.
And then they go, yeah, but you could have chosen not to. And you're like, well, yeah, I could have chosen to lose all my friends and my family. And like, yeah, you could have. Like, you see, this isn't a choice. They're like, well, yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a very interesting obfuscation of responsibility.
Yeah. So when I say it's not a good answer, it's because this denial stays very firmly in place every fucking step of the way. And my wife and I aren't talking to each other about it. We're both in our own stages of denial about it. We've both convinced we can see the cars heading towards the cliff, but we're just convincing ourselves it's not really going to happen. And so, again, that's why I say it's not a great story. Like, to me, I feel like I kind of sound like an idiot the entire way through here, because I'm essentially, during this whole process, even though I'm going my own path, like mentally I'm out of Scientology, I'm still trying to convince Scientology that they shouldn't officially kick me out. I'm like, there's no reason to do that. I'll leave you guys alone. You leave me alone. You don't have to kick me out. If you get
Did they want to kick you out? Did they start?
They don't want to kick anybody out, But if they think you're just going to keep lying to them about breaking the rules, eventually they sort of have to.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to things that relate to David Miscavige, like the information that my mom had received, almost all Scientologists in the world received an email from one of these high-level executives that basically said, Scientology is great, L. Ron Hubbard is great, but David Miscavige is ruining the show. And that was a big deal.
That came from a high-level Scientologist?
Who had left, not just a high-level Scientologist, a high-level Sea Org member who almost everyone in the world knew. And this email was sent out on like New Year's Eve, like 2000. I'm going to get the year wrong, but it was 2011 or 12 or something. And this email started circulating among Scientologists. So all the ethics officers and MAAs of the world were interviewing Scientologists. Did you read the email from Debbie Cook? Who shared it with you? What was said? When was it said? Who else was there? And during the whole witch hunt for who was spreading around this information, that's when my mom got declared a suppressive person. So essentially for 2 years, I just kept lying. Every time somebody would rat me out for, hey, like my nanny, our kid's nanny was a Scientologist. Well, she would sort of secretly interrogate our kids to see if our kids were still seeing their grandmother.
Fuck. That's some devious shit, man.
It's really fucking devious. Okay. And so I'm going to keep repeating myself when I say the answer is just not good, because it's the thing about the control that cults have over their members, particularly people who were born and raised in it. No matter how much I no longer believed in Scientology, there was no part of me that necessarily wanted to deal with what it meant to be kicked out. And so I was trying not to be kicked out, even though I didn't give a damn about Scientology. It was my life that I was trying to keep intact.
But you still can't talk to your wife about this?
Correct.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah.
When did you guys start talking?
Pretty much never.
Are you guys still married?
Yes, we are.
Has there been a point in time where you've started talking about this?
Not deeply.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's hard.
Yeah, but that means it's meaningful.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. I feel like you guys should have to have every conversation you've ever had over again.
Probably.
So eventually it came to a point in time, though. Did they tell you it was time to go, or did you tell them that you were leaving?
It was them. I'll fill in a little part of the story here. Remember I said I wanted to just stay in Scientology and be the spy for like Mike Rinder and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And I said Mike Rinder started a blog and Marty Rathbun was another guy who started a blog. Well, I was secretly commenting on their blogs and I was in touch with them.
What was your username?
One of them was First. And here's how stupid I was. I created a fake email, like a hush mail, to make comments on these blogs. And yet the email was obviously like, it was like ASL123. It's like, that's my initials. I mean, it's like ridiculous.
That's not Jason Bourne shit.
Now these WordPress blogs can easily be hacked.
Oh, yeah.
And when you hack them, you can get the IP addresses and the email addresses for everyone who makes comments. Well, that's exactly what Scientology did. And they compiled profiles of the handles that people were using. I'm not fucking making this up, okay? They compiled profiles of the handles and the IP addresses and the email addresses and the content, and they would assign, they had a unit of SEERG members, they would assign these to figure out which Scientologists were making these comments. So I was called in for a meeting where I was confronted with my blog posts. So we think this is you. I fucking lied my ass off about it. I never did I ever admit to them that it was me. I've admitted a million times online now.
Yeah.
But I was never not going to lie to them about this. Right?
Holy shit.
And so I'm going to go back to what I said. It's not a good story. So not only was I stuck in denial this whole time, but I was also being very careless considering the stakes and the level of denial that I was in. It's not like I was taking great pains to cover my tracks. And then I, arranged to meet Mike Rinder in like the produce section of Costco. And we just stood there for like 2 hours having a conversation right in the middle of Costco in a city where full of Scientologists, And so what happened is when they first confronted me with my blog post, they were only pretty sure it was me, and they needed me to admit it to be sure. And when I wouldn't admit it, that bought me some time. Once, I don't know what it is they did that got them 100% proof, but once they had 100% proof, they gave me one last chance. And they called me in and they're like, we don't think it was you. We know it was you. And this is just your last chance to come clean. And I was like, oh, is that all this meeting is about? And like, yeah. I'm like, okay, bye. And I got up and left. I was like, I'm not saying shit.
Yeah.
That is when they were like, okay, we're going to declare him. But it wasn't instant because I was working for a high profile, famous Scientologist, at least famous in the Scientology world. And he was a fund manager back in the day, a famous fund manager, Kurt Feshbach. And they're like, we can't declare Aaron as long as he's working for Kurt, because if we do that, then Aaron's going to have a lawsuit against Kurt once Kurt fires him.
Yep. They gotta move some pieces around.
They had to move some pieces around. So they started maneuvering some things behind the scenes. And as soon as I saw the first piece get moved, I contacted an attorney immediately and just started secretly recording every single conversation that was taking place at work and everything. So to the point when, months later, when they finally called me in to officially lay me off, they gave me some bullshit story. And I'm recording the entire thing. I'm like, okay, so you guys know. I let them talk for like 15 minutes uninterrupted. I'm like, okay, you guys know that I know every single word you just said is complete bullshit, right? I'm like, oh, what? What? How could you say that? Anyway, I just packed up my things and left. Now, this is me still being in denial because, I was making good money working in a lucrative industry, the hedge fund research world. And yet I only got into this world through Kurt Feshbach because Kurt Feshbach was a Scientologist. And as a Scientologist, all he cares about is what your experience is with Scientology. He doesn't care if you're educated or anything that. He's like, we can train you to do anything. So I sort of lucked into this very lucrative industry that I never would have been able to get into the traditional route because I don't have a high school diploma. And so when I lost that job, I was literally like, I'm fucked. I mean, it's not like I'm unemployable. I can get a job anywhere, but I was making really good money there.
Yeah.
Well, just by virtue and luck of having already made a lot of great contacts in the industry during the 5 years that I was working for Kurt, I had people in the industry who helped me get into business for myself, get my own company formed, get my first client. And I'll tell you, one of the things that made this soul-destroying transition out of Scientology as easy for me as it was, that doesn't mean it was easy, but as easy as it was, is because money was never a problem. Scientology was never able to hold that over my head of like, we're going to rob you of your ability to support your family. And almost by luck, within 4 weeks of losing this job, I was making multiples more working for myself from home, doing the exact same stuff I'd already been doing for Kurt for 5 years. And so a lot of other people whose lives just fall to ruins during this process, I think it's largely because of the financial, I would say, comorbidity.
Yeah.
Scientology is destroying your family life while your ability to earn and provide has also been destroyed because your entire network has just disappeared. A lot of Scientologists work for Scientology companies. A lot of Scientology business owners, all their staff are Scientologists. I have people I'm secretly in touch with who've left Scientology, but they're under the radar. They stay quiet because they're like, all my staff will quit tomorrow if I get declared. So people have to put things in place in order to leave Scientology the right way. I sort of just I want to say jumped off a cliff. I was pushed off a cliff because I was in denial. I was standing on the edge of a cliff. But then I got lucky that I, kind of had a parachute appear out of nowhere.
So, they pull you and they let you go. They declared you. What does that do to your wife?
Yeah. I promised myself I was not going to cry on this podcast. So,
do you generally cry on podcasts?
On Lex's I did. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm not going to. Okay, I'm going to take my time here. Because it is my wife and her family that really bore the brunt of all this. All right, I'm going to really take my time.
Go ahead.
All right.
We got nothing but time, man.
what was it? Where was I?
So they pulled you in, right? You had that conversation at work. They declare you a suppressive person. And where does that leave your wife?
Right. I promised myself I wasn't going to. Okay. Okay. Oh, fuck. I'll get there. I just have to be in the right frame of mind. The exact same thing happens. The exact same thing happens like the conversation that they have with me and my mom. So they go to her. I saw you do an interview with someone whose husband was in the service and took his life. And she barely, her voice barely cracked. No, I get that. It was, but I was like, you know what? If she's not going to cry talking about that fucking story.
Some of it has to do with how often people have talked about it.
Yeah. No, but it never gets easier. I'm not.
It will get easier. It will get easier. There are there are other people who come in and it means some things just are always going to hit hard, man.
All right. Well, let's just give it a shot.
I mean, we could talk about how tall Tom Cruise is and how he wears lifts, maybe, allegedly.
No, it's sort of become a running joke because in the episode where I in the first the Leah Remini show, it was just basically my interview was just basically 2 days of crying, and then for season 2 we did sort of a recap where everyone from season 1 came together to do like a little, what's changed in the last year, and the whole fucking thing just started out with me crying. And then I go on Lex's. And after the first interview, I was like, I'm never going to do that again.
But think about it, though, from the other perspective of how long you lived in that environment.
Yeah.
Like, you can only push stuff down so much before it is going to come back out. And maybe, I tell you right now, I'm neither a doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, lawyer, but maybe letting it come out is the healthiest thing you can do.
All right, Diane Sawyer. No. Look, I understand.
As an expert in shoving down human emotions,
I understand. I do understand.
yeah.
Okay, so they go to my wife and they say, you have to divorce your husband or you're going to be declared. And she says no. She's like, I'm not gonna do that. So she gets declared. And then they go to her parents. And they say to her mom and her dad, they say, you have to disconnect from your daughter, Heather, and your 3 granddaughters, or you're going to be declared. And my wife has 2 sisters and a brother. And so...
All in Scientology?
Yeah. And at that point, for her parents, they're basically now going, which grandkids are we going to keep?
Yeah.
And which grandkids are we going to lose? Because no matter what decision we make, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're in the lose-lose decision place.
Exactly. And so And that's the part in the story where I go, up until that point, to some degree, each person in that chain was making a decision more or less based on what was going to serve them the best, right? My wife could have divorced me and kept her entire family and kept her kids, and all she would have lost was a husband. I say all, I mean, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. I could have disconnected from my mom, and I would have kept everything in my life except one person.
When you say disconnect, in their eyes, what they're talking about,
Never see or speak to again.
a complete and total, like, essentially whitewashing that person from your life, from your mind.
Never, no correspondence, no communication, no written communication spoken, zero. They don't exist anymore. And so it's really, I feel like in this equation, her parents is the first time you get to something where it's like, it wasn't just a matter of, are we going to make a decision with respect to one individual or not? It's like they're losing children and grandchildren for no other reason than this horrible fucking organization has these rules in place. And so they disconnected. And the whole family disconnected. Heather's entire family lives within a 5 to 15 minute drive of us. We haven't seen them since 2014.
Is it instant? Like, when Scientology approaches somebody with that situation, they're talking about instant compliance, like the second that they leave. So when your wife made the decision to stay with you and your family, it's not like a little titrating process. It's like a fucking guillotine coming down.
Yes. So like if the ethics officer the ethics officer the MAA would meet with her family. And they say, you have to disconnect. I'm like, okay, we're going to disconnect. And then they would literally put together steps. Okay, let's put it in place. Are you going to do it on the phone? You need to text, you're going to email, you're going to do a face-to-face conversation. They're like, not only do they literally plan it out, but then you have to document and report compliance.
Fuck.
On the meter. So like the ethics officer, you're doing a metered ethics interview. Okay, tell us what happened. And they have to believe you. And they have to say that the e-meter believes you. And this is a family that had a great family dynamic. It's not like Heather was the black sheep of the family. She was like the favorite daughter. And so, even a Scientologist, well, not only a Scientologist, Heather's parents sat down for a Scientology produced interview and did a video that they put up on the hate website they created about me, that they say Aaron's the one who won't let us see the kids.
Fuck, man.
So I was about to say a Scientologist would sit down and deny that there is such a thing as disconnection. And yet you go, well, not only is there, but you were literally forced to disconnect from daughter and grandchildren who 1 week earlier you absolutely loved. And you even sat down and then did a video denying any of that happened.
Those hate websites are interesting. What shocks me the most about them is their unoriginality. They're almost all the same.
It's true.
Yeah. But what's the title of yours? Because they all have weird titles, like
Well,
Aaron Smith Levin is
a
full of
violent
shit or something like that, or like they're all. It's like
So
from the outside perspective, it looks like the same group of people is putting these all together.
Right. You're usually a violent psychopath or a bully or a child abuser or a woman beater. I mean,
Does Scientology do they admit ownership of those websites or that they created them?
If you pull up the website, at the bottom it says all rights reserved, Church of Scientology International. They don't try to hide it. They don't try to hide it.
Fuck.
But I mean, did you know they created one of those websites on every single person who went on Leah Remini's show? Every single person got their own dedicated website. Yeah. So my name, AaronSmithLevin.com, is a website created by Scientology. And people go, oh, you should get the website taken down. I go, fuck no, leave that shit up there.
Yeah, it doesn't paint them in a good light. I would
want
actually say
to-
leave it
yeah.
up too.
I say I want to be able to point people to this website and go, this is the kind of organization that Scientology is. I want to be able to do that. In fact, I started taking their videos and doing reaction videos to their videos on my channel. I go, I want you guys to see what my mother-in-law has to say about me. Let's take a look.
That's rough.
I'm like, if you guys are going to make these videos about me, I'm going to make money off of them. That's what I'm doing.
You should.
Yeah. And I'm like, if you're going to, if you're a Scientologist and you're going to sit down and do these like North Korean POW style videos, just lying about former members, then I'm going to try to make you internet famous for doing it. And maybe that will make Scientologists think twice about doing these videos. Because honestly, I mean, I get emotional talking about the impact it had on my wife's family and stuff, but the stuff that Scientology puts up doesn't get under my skin at all. I genuinely look at it and I go, wow, you guys don't realize how bad this makes you look?
Yeah.
Like, you guys don't realize that these people don't come across as credible?
They really don't.
Yeah.
It almost is like the North Korean sympathizer. Like, everything is great here. I'm so well fed.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. So what would be expected if because you said they live like 15 minutes away. Mm-hmm. What would be the expected response from your wife's family if you guys randomly were physically in the same spot? Like, say you were shopping at Costco and it's like, oh shit, we're in the same aisle. What does Scientology expect of them?
They could either just turn around and walk away, or they could be pleasant and say, hi, great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Bye. As long as they then go back to the church and report that it occurred, they're going to be fine. What the church is worried about is them secretly being in touch with us and sharing sympathies and sharing information or whatever. Just encountering someone and saying a couple words isn't going to get you in trouble, especially because you went in and reported it.
Okay.
And in fact, so my in-laws, they live a few miles down the road, but they used to own the houses right across the house from where I live. They used to investment, like rentals. Mm-hmm. And we were sort of using a bit of a loophole in the Scientology rules. Whenever my in-laws were over there doing some sort of maintenance, we would send our girls over to say hi. This is before our girls even knew like our girls were too young. We didn't tell them they were disconnected from.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, go say hi to grandma, grandpa. And sometimes they would literally go run inside the house to hide from the kids.
Fuck.
And then sometimes the kids would get them before they ran inside, and then they would talk to the kids and pretend like everything was fine. But then they would go to the church and report the fact that the kids had come over to talk to them. And because they kept reporting to the church that the kids were talking to them, Scientology made them sell the houses.
No shit. Oh, so there would not even be that chance of an interaction.
Exactly. And I mean, it's hard to describe how fucking fucked up that is.
Yeah, I don't know if there's words for that. How old are your daughters now?
Now they're 16, 14, and 12.
How do you talk to them about this situation now that they have,
very openly.
Yeah, I mean, they have better processing ability. What
Yeah.
kind of questions do they have?
Not much. Like, I've given them the overview of what Scientologists believe. I don't even know if they've seen the Aftermath show. I do know they watched some of my videos. They've never asked us. They've never asked us a lot of questions, and they're very, very smart. Like they're very, very intelligent, and I kind of want to leave it up to them to find out whatever they want to find out as questions arise. Because I mean, like you said, these days you can find out literally anything with your phone.
Yeah. How do you explain to them that they don't see their grandparents?
They're
anymore?
old enough now that we just go Scientology and their disconnection policies are the reason. And so in that example, though, of course, Scientology looks horrible for making my in-laws sell the property. I'm a little more. I place blame a little more personally. I go, how fucking weak are you that you couldn't just say hi to your granddaughter without running to the fucking ethics officer and being like, oh, sir, I just wanted you to know I said hi to my granddaughter today. Like, Scientology certainly is bears the primary responsibility and fault for this horrible system.
Yeah.
But I go, have some fucking balls and some integrity. And maybe you don't have to go ratting on yourself all the time. Like, you could have just kept that to yourself. That could have just been your little private thing. That could have just been your loophole. We were using it as a loophole because we don't recognize Scientology's disconnection policies. You guys are the Scientologists that recognize disconnection policies. So we were sending them over almost like, why shouldn't we? We didn't disconnect from you. You disconnected from us. So here's the kids. They could have just gone, hey, you know what? This is a cool little loophole. They're sending the kids over and we're not even asking for it. So we have plausible deniability. So let's just keep this going.
And we'll be back on Thursdays to do maintenance.
Exactly. You couldn't keep that little fucking secret.
It's
like,
it seems like it's a fear-based ideology.
It is. I know. I'm not very compassionate in that regard.
I'm not compassionate at all, for clarity. Like, trust me, I have a high, rightfully or wrongfully placed, like I have no right to judge anybody on it, but in the situation you are describing, the judgment that I do have falls onto the in-laws, not the system itself. However, I can understand how the system can, over a massive period of time, influence how people think. It seems like it's a very fear-based ideology.
It is.
Especially with the internal reporting, the constant reporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And again, you're choosing to participate in that system, right? So that's where it goes back to choice.
Mm-hmm. And so that is why in the beginning I was like, there's academic definitions for what makes something a cult versus a religion. And I kind of go, I don't even give a shit about all that. As long as Scientology is destroying families the way that I have described, I don't give a shit what you call them. I'm going to call them a cult, and I'm going to troll them mercilessly every chance that I get. And that's why you sort of come full circle and you go, Lex trying to get me to, you need to take some of these ideas more seriously. And it's like, I think I was taking them pretty seriously.
Yeah, seriously as one can, actually. Well, here's a question.
I don't mean to get down on Lex. I know where he's coming from, but
Yeah.
he took a lot of shit in the comment section.
He can take it.
He can take it.
He'll be just fucking fine, Lex. Okay, when they come out with the alien stuff, what did you say it was OT3?
Yeah. Now, you get alien stuff right from day one. OT3 is specifically the Xenu story.
How hard is it, do you think, for people to self-rationalize that particular gem that's dropped on them?
I think it's easier than you would think because...
Is it like the sunken cost fallacy or like, fuck it, I've been doing this for so long?
Sure. The problem with getting the Xenu story on OT3 isn't that the story in the context of Scientology is that unbelievable. It's when people go, this is what the fuck I've been waiting for the whole time. This isn't anything special. The expectations of what these magical OT levels are supposed to be is so fucking high that when you find out it's like Xenu blew up the body thetans and they're on me and I've got to telepathically audit them, that's what OT3 is. It's the management of expectations that's the problem there, not the story itself. Because Scientologists' view of the world is like Star Wars, or view of existence is like Star Wars. There's intelligent life in every solar system on every planet.
Does it bother them that we haven't been able to find proof of that?
Oh, they think that's because that's almost like they think the proof is there. It's just being cloaked.
Yes.
Yeah. No, Scientologists believe in aliens. They believe in aliens here. They believe in the Greys. L. Ron Hubbard talks about the fifth invader force.
The Greys?
The Greys. You know, there's like 3 different types of aliens. All those cool alien books like Alien Agenda, Rule by Secrecy by Jim Marrs. If you haven't read these books, you got to read these books. These books are literally circulated within Scientology as like, they figured out the secret. They call Earth a prison planet. So when Alex Jones's website is prisonplanet.com, there are so many Scientologists that are like, how does Alex know?
How does Alex know? He's not crazy at all. Fuck.
So, we're talking about the alien story. Scientologists believe in aliens. I mean, shit, I believe in aliens.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not like if you use aliens in a grander term, like intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, it seems to be damn. I mean, I know it's not infinite, but it's beyond a scale I can measure. I have a hard time believing we're probably the only people out there. So I guess to a degree, I'm open to the idea of it existing. That's different than saying they're like fucking hiding among us.
Yeah, Scientologists do believe they're hiding among us. And so, and this is just because you asked about the OT3 stuff, how easy is it to rationalize it away? That story is not crazy in the context of Scientology.
Which they have been pursuing
From day one.
voluntarily from day one. Okay.
L. Ron Hubbard even has this whole story of how the Bible was intentionally, is false and is designed to bring about a population, i.e. Christians, who are anticipating and looking forward to the second coming of Christ. But that second coming will really be an invasion by the fifth invader force. And that's why the alien psychiatrist overlords that kind of pull the strings on the planet created the Bible, or sort of planted a little seed into our spiritual minds so that we would create the Bible, that humanity would create the Bible, so that we would end up with a population that when the fifth invader force came back would welcome them instead of fight them. And yet Scientologists will still say that you can be a Christian and a Scientologist at the same time.
I mean, I'll give it to L. Ron Hubbard. Some of his shit was very creative, and some of it is incredibly unoriginal. It's like an interesting balance of the two.
It's true.
Okay, so what? OT3, you get the Xenu story. What are they sprinkling on you up to 8? Like, what the fuck comes after that?
It's a slight different harmonics of 3. So I'll get this slightly wrong. The guys who've fully traveled this path always issue me minor corrections when I give these descriptions, but here's the overview. OT3, you're first finding out about body thetans. And I realize I haven't even probably fully explained what Scientologists
We haven't even
believe
defined
about
Scientology
thetans.
yet. We've just been
Nice.
talking about your experiences.
Well, even without defining it all, here's my best effort.
Yeah.
Scientologists believe we're all thetans. Here, one of the best ways they demonstrate it is they go, close your eyes and get a picture of an apple. And you go, okay, I did it. And they go, well, the picture of the apple, that's your mind. And the person who's looking at the apple, that's you. That's you as a thetan, a spirit. Immortal, cannot die. A thetan cannot die. It's not even possible. Okay. So Scientologists already have this idea of thetans. Thetans are immortal, we're spirits, separate from the physical universe. There's other definitions like a static, no wavelength, no position in time or space, but a thetan can choose to position itself in time or space. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's your typical garden variety spiritual stuff. The word body thetan doesn't even exist in Scientology until you get to OT3. So before OT3, and this is where Dianetics, we didn't even talk about Dianetics really. Dianetics is like a mental therapy counseling thing.
It's kind of what it started as, right?
That is what it started as.
Yeah.
And so all the way, the whole bottom half, non-confidential half of the bridge is addressed to getting rid of your reactive mind. Reactive mind is kind of, we're going to really oversimplify it, L. Ron Hubbard's version of the maybe Freudian subconscious, okay? So the entire lower half of Scientology's bridge is aimed at getting rid of your reactive mind. Everyone has one, and L. Ron Hubbard said it is the root cause of anything negative in your life.
Trying to get to clear, right?
Yep. So clear is you got rid of your reactive mind. You have no idea what's on the OT levels. People have just been telling you your whole Scientology travel that it's magic.
But they do lay out the bridge. They just say above this is the confidential part, so you need to focus on getting here first.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then you get to OT 1 and 2 are just short little things. And OT 3, you're like, you got rid of your reactive mind, but you have tens of thousands of thetans stuck to you. Their reactive minds are all causing your problems now.
Fuck.
You have to get rid of their reactive minds and make them go and pick up a body. Okay. So you do that on OT3 for months, and you're like, okay, I got rid of them all. And they're like, good job, you got rid of them all. I'm like, I'm ready for OT4. And you go, okay, well, you got some more body thetans to take care of on OT4. It turns out the body thetans that had drug problems, you weren't able to detect them. You were not able to detect those thetans because of their unique drug trauma. So now we're going to do something special to get rid of those body thetans. And you're like, oh, wow. I hope there's something really good after 4. So you finish 4, and then you get to 5. Now, 5 specializes on the clusters. Like, ooh, there's all these clusters of body thetans. First, you have to find the clusters and break up the clusters. And then when the clusters break up, then you can get rid of the thetans. And you're like, more body thetans. Holy shit. So you finish OT5. OT6 is just a course where you learn how to audit OT7. OT7, more body thetans, except you're auditing yourself. So now this is called solo auditing.
Just you and an e-meter?
You and an e-meter. OT3 was also solo auditing, but 7, you're, you and an e-meter in a room 6 times a day. You have to audit yourself 6 times a day on OT7.
Okay, so you're just trying to make yourself insane.
For years. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Not less than 2 years. I think L. Ron Hubbard did it in 2 years, so no one's allowed to do it faster than 2 years. Some people audit OT7 for 10 years.
6 times a day for 10 years?
6 times a day for 10 years.
Holy fuck.
Could you imagine being at the lower levels of Scientology and someone actually explains this to you, that this is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Well, I mean, I can imagine them doing that and having absolutely nobody buy in on it.
Exactly. So then you get to OT8. Now, on the bottom half of the bridge, a lot of auditing involves remembering things from past lives. And for someone who's done thousands of hours of that type of counseling, their past life memories become very much part of their identity of who they even think they are. Because it's not, our self-identity has to do with what we remember of our history in this life. But imagine you extend that back a few trillion years and don't, all these past life memories are basically just imagination. So you have convinced yourself of who you even are as a person based on these past life memories, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You get to OT8 and you find out most of those past life memories actually belonged to your body thetans, not you. So they pretty much strip away a large part of what your self-identity has become. That's OT8. And then they say, now that you know who you're not, you're ready to find out who you really are. And you go, okay, I'm ready. And you're like, well, stay tuned. We'll get back to you when OT9 and 10 is released.
Is that where they just leave people with a cliffhanger?
Yeah.
Holy fuck. What does that do to somebody's psychology and personality if they get all the way to that level? Do you notice a shift in people as they're climbing through that ladder?
I've spoken to a lot of people who've gone all the way up to OT8 and asked, and are now out of Scientology. And they go, I just felt like I had this big withhold. I felt like I had this big secret that I couldn't tell anybody. Because like I said, an OT8's not allowed to talk to another OT8. You're not allowed to talk to your friend and be like, do you have the same concerns about how that ended off as I do? And if you're an OT8 and you're acting like maybe you're not quite happy with what happened, someone's going to write a report on you and turn that in.
How do Scientologists treat people at the higher end of the bridge?
They treat them like they must have some secret knowledge.
Where's Mr. Cruz on the bridge?
He's OT8.
Is he? Mm-hmm. That explains it. His success in the movies.
Right, exactly. It does make you wonder, though, how can he still be so passionately committed to Scientology when he is.
You think?
Yes. I think it's been a very strategic move to stop publicly talking about Scientology.
I mean, he is a fantastic actor, right? So he could act as if he is incredibly passionate about it. I'm curious. He's one who I don't know if, obviously it would never happen on a public forum, but to sit down and be like, hey, man, what do you, let's strip all the bullshit away if it's possible. What do you actually believe? Or are you so deep into the sunken cost thing? And from what I have heard from people peripheral, he lives a great life because of who he is in Scientology. Is it that what you appreciate more? You know what I mean? There's a lot of moving pieces with that particular individual.
True. David Miscavige and Scientology are inextricably linked to every part of Tom Cruise's life. Scientology manages his production staff, his production company, his home staff. What do you call it? The people who work, his household staff.
Yeah.
Scientology.
Well, he lives in a Scientology building.
He
right?
doesn't. Well, in Clearwater, he has a condo.
Yeah.
The condo's owned. The tower is owned by a Scientologist.
Yeah.
Everyone in the building's a Scientologist, but technically Scientology doesn't own it.
It's a convenient explanation.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, if you work at Odin Productions, which is Tom Cruise's production company, I've never even heard the company mentioned in the press, but Odin, Odin, like he's like is it a
God,
Greek god? Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, what is Odin the god of?
I think he's the Norse god, like
Is he the god of
main
crushing
god. Yeah, thunder. I think.
Is he the god
I
of
think
being
it is
short?
thunder. I know, right? His staff are interrogated by, I'm using colloquially,
Yeah.
the people who work directly for David Miscavige.
Oh, of course.
Like if you, right? So that's why Tom Cruise cannot keep a girlfriend or even find one. It's because you're not just dating Tom Cruise. You're dating Tom Cruise and David Miscavige. David Miscavige is his best friend. David Miscavige has been the best man at all three of his weddings. So Miscavige personally oversees the hiring of his household staff, his production company staff, anyone who Tom's having a problem with is getting Scientology interrogations from people who work directly for David Miscavige. So,
man,
it's if Tom no longer was committed to Scientology, then he would be connected to his daughter Suri. It is his commitment to Scientology, which is why he has disconnected from Suri, even though technically he doesn't have to. It's almost like Tom is signaling to all the Scientologists in the world that when it comes time for you to disconnect from your family members, you better do it. Because I disconnected from my own daughter when I didn't even have to.
why do you think that they would want him to be less vocal about his passion for Scientology?
It opened up too much of a door for just gratuitous criticism of Scientology in the press.
Well, he was acting like a fucking crazy man, for clarity.
Yes. And I do think that he and Dave Miscavige just basically sat down and said, Tom, you did everything you needed to and more. And you don't have to do any more of that. That Tom Cruise, the quiet, silent, successful Tom Cruise is actually more beneficial to Scientology and Scientology's image than the loud, outspoken, couch jumping Tom Cruise. I think it's weird that Tom's personality has devolved to a point where normal Tom Cruise is fucking crazy Tom Cruise. Like, it's weird that you have to put a muzzle on this guy.
Yeah.
That's his personality now.
Unless that's where the ideology drives you, you know?
Yeah, I think his personality has markedly changed since Miscavige orchestrated the divorce from Nicole Kidman.
You think he was responsible for that?
100%.
Really?
Nicole didn't really like Scientology. Nicole was pulling Tom further and further away from Scientology during that whole Eyes Wide Shut filming and everything. No, I mentioned a guy earlier, Marty Rathbun, who for a while was an outspoken critic. He used to work directly under Miscavige. He since took a deal and went back.
To Scientology? No way.
If you go to the hate website, this guy Marty, he's one of the people who does hate videos about me, Mike, Leah, everyone else. He used to be one of the most outspoken critics. He then went back.
What do you think they offered him?
A lot of money for his adopted son, probably in a trust fund in the future that can't be found by attorneys. So Marty, when he was being an outspoken critic, he was the guy who was deployed by Miscavige to go get Tom back from Nicole and split a wedge between them. And he very intensively audited Tom to get him back on board.
So the auditing, they're taking notes on all that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, it's all in writing.
So I'm not a religious person. I've never been to, I might have been to a Catholic church one time. Never done a confession, but I feel like the priest that you're talking to in there is not taking notes, right? Because I don't think it's supposed to end up being a dossier that you could use against you. I mean, you want to talk about fucking leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like the deeper people get into this as well, too, especially if you can't leave until the person auditing you tells you you've worked through everything and they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper,
Yeah.
that's a huge fulcrum against people because I'm assuming that stuff is probably kept.
Oh, it's totally kept. And
probably, depending on the individual, racked and stacked and just ready to go to use against you.
yeah. It's funny because you would think that information would be used as blackmail to keep someone in Scientology.
Yeah.
And yet I've never actually seen that occur, believe it or not. Like even on my process that I described, at no point in that process did they sit me down and go, you're going to stay in line and keep your mouth shut. Or how about when I kept lying about disconnecting from my mom? At no point did they go, look, you've been lying to us about this for a long time. If you keep this up, we're going to release the info. Because at that point, remember, you're still a Scientologist, so who the fuck are they going to release it to? Once you're declared a suppressive person, then they're going to use that info to do whatever you want. But there's no point where they was like, by the way, you know that if we declare you, here's the stuff we're going to make public about you. They don't say that. It's not, and I've seen a lot of these things happen behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's a weird comment. It's a weird thing to note that that's not actually ever part of the way they try to keep someone in line.
What do you think they do with all the information they gather on people?
Oh, I know what they do. I mean, it's in the files.
Yeah.
There's different types of files too. There's the auditing files, and then there's the ethics files. Now, in the world of Scientology, the difference is that technically stuff that's in the auditing file you can't get in trouble for. Anything that's in the ethics file you can get in trouble for.
Yes. Yes.
And so, and also, if Scientology, when they make information public, realize there's a signaling problem there with people that are still in Scientology. Because if you're still in Scientology and you see them releasing information about people that came from the auditing files, you're going to go, wait a second. I thought those were confidential.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword.
So they have to be careful to only release information that's in the ethics files. And also, they only release information on people, not just for leaving Scientology, but for publicly speaking out against it. If John Travolta were to leave Scientology and just keep his mouth shut and, never say the word Scientology publicly, they wouldn't release anything about all the gay stuff.
How dare you say he's gay?
Well, he's bi.
Yeah. It's a French story. It goes both ways.
But if
what's wild is that in this modern era, it's like, dude, nobody gives a fuck.
that's
You could
my
actually
position on it.
remove all of the leverage that anybody would potentially have against you. It's like, I hate to tell you, buddy, but probably since the 1980s, people might have been thinking that.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a fuck anymore. Let it go, man.
I know. I know. Well, now that his wife's passed,
She was a
maybe he will.
Scientologist as well, right?
Yeah, and I think in some respects she was more of a true believer than he was.
Is he at the
I
top
think
of
John-
the bridge as well?
I know John got up to OT7. I don't know for a fact that he finished it, and if he did finish it, I don't know for a fact that he did OT8.
Yeah.
I think John is one of these guys who really likes the community and the social aspect, and I think there's a lot of people in Scientology who he truly loves and who truly love him. And I kind of throw it back to my story a little bit, where it's like, even when I very much no longer believed in all the bullshit and the hype and the bridge and the OT levels and the Thetans, there was still no part of me that was like, please kick me out. In fact, I was fighting to not be kicked out. Even while saying to their faces, look, I don't give a shit about the bridge or anything, but you don't have to worry about me. I'll just stay in my lane. You guys stay in your lane. I won't mess up your stuff. Don't mess up my stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were like, that's not how this works.
Fuck.
So John, even if he got to a point where he's like, he could take it or leave it, he's like, but what about all my friends? Why would I lose all my friends just for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think you're going to see someone like John ever speak out. And even if Tom were to have second thoughts again, I just don't think we'd know about it.
How did you think they brought him back? If Nicole was pulling him in the other direction, what do you think? How do you think they tugged him back?
It's that process of auditing, and there's a few different kinds of auditing, but auditing really does go to the core of you and your responsibility and your causation and things you've done that you shouldn't have, things you haven't done that you should have. And this process can create kind of a state of euphoria where you feel, even on some of the more kind of abusive interrogation style types of auditing, you can come out of one of those sessions being like feeling invigorated and like reborn, like, oh, fuck yeah, my eyes are fine. My
Almost
eyes
like
are
it was
open
cathartic.
again. Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And when you have, with Tom Cruise, you have David Miscavige there right behind the scenes trying to, pump him up like, you're the biggest being and you create the biggest effects and you're the biggest movie star in the world. And, Scientology can help you get there and all this stuff. It can be very self-empowering. It very much speaks to the ego. I may not know what ego means exactly because I grew up in a cult, but but it's very, everything in Scientology comes down to you. And that can be empowering. It can also be abusive depending on, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like if you're in an auditing session, you're talking about having been, sexually abused as a kid, spiritually speaking, Scientology is going to want you to figure out how you were responsible for that.
It's a tough road to hoe.
Even it's because of all the kids you molested 1,000 years ago on that other planet. Like spiritually speaking, that's where they want you to get to. They want to get you to a point where you see how you are the cause of everything, always have been, and therefore it's also within your power to improve anything. Like I said, that can be empowering. And to someone like Tom Cruise, I think that very much speaks to probably his personality.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you exactly what were the auditing sessions that Marty delivered to bring him back into the fold. But generally speaking, that's the focus of auditing.
Seems like it certainly worked. Well, then you compare that, or you compile that with, like, he is incredibly famous, incredibly wealthy. Almost everybody around him, given the orbit of people, even absent Scientology, are going to mold to his wishes as it is anyway.
Yeah.
Coupled with the fact that he is not tall.
It's true. He's short. I mean, people who met him be like, so much shorter than I thought he was going to be. And yeah, have you seen Miscavige is a good half a head shorter than Tom? Have you ever seen them next to each other in a photo?
Not in a while. The last picture I saw them was like, yeah, they're both sitting on their
and
motorcycles.
they're both wearing stilts anyway.
100%. But I mean, I'm sorry, but like the small man complex is an actual real thing. I know some small people, and they're fucking pissed about it. I know I keep bringing up that he's small, but it's not like he can control that. But it is to ignore that can be part of somebody's personality is a mistake that shouldn't be made, and you play into all those other things. Yeah, I could see how that would be. Fuck, why would you want to leave? I guess you could feel like the most powerful person on the face of the planet,
or this sector of the galaxy in Scientology's case.
Indeed.
So you have all that private secret stuff, and I mean, there's no question that information is what they use to attack people who speak out. It's just kind of weird to note that they don't actually use it that way when you're in. People assume, oh, they must have dirt on Tom and John, and that's why they stay. And I'm always quick to go, that's not why people stay.
Yeah.
I think if they were actually threatened with that kind of stuff, that would come back on them.
What does it look like going forward for Scientology in your estimation? Again, with, phones and like the access to information is unbelievable. Do you think it's possible for them to stop the decline?
I don't.
So what do you think it looks like? Like what would be the breaking point of that organization?
When they lose their tax exempt status again, which I think will happen. If I had to guess, I'd say within a 10-year time frame.
What would cause that? So how did they lose it the first time, and how would they lose it again?
The first time they lost it, I believe the IRS determined that L. Ron Hubbard was enriching himself personally from Scientology funds, and so they yanked the status.
Yeah.
That's not how it would happen this time. This time it would be, I think, RICO-related stuff to do with wire fraud and identity theft and credit card fraud and unauthorized bank transactions. Scientology has gotten very desperate in their fundraising attempts because They have to keep their money stats going up where they have less and less members.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's
one
only
of
a
the,
few ways you can inflate those stats. As your people go down, you got to extract more out of them.
so Scientology fundraisers, I mean, this is going to sound like I'm making this shit up. I promise. This is like real shit. Okay. They will say, okay, give me your social security number and your address and your birthday and your name. And they'll disappear into the back and they will pretend to be you, call up all the credit card companies, and they'll open up $100,000
Shut the fuck up.
worth of credit in your name.
And the person who's giving that information knows they're going to do that? I mean,
They don't know that's exactly what's going
I'd
to
fall
happen.
for that shit one time. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, if I'm being honest, I would be like, my name is Eat Dicks, and my social is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, but these are true believers, and so this how it happens is I'm a Scientology registrar, so I'm trying to sell you a big package of auditing so you can go clear.
Yeah.
Now your objection is I don't have any money, and I go I can help you with that. Oh well, like as a Scientologist, I'm not allowed to tell you I don't want that auditing. I have to, of course, I have to want the auditing. That's why we're Scientologists. So what's the barrier? The barrier is money. I'm telling you I can help you with that. So you almost can't say no. I mean, you could. You can always say no.
Yeah.
But you almost can't because I'm offering you a solution to the only real objection, which is you don't have enough money. I go, okay, I can help you with that. Give me your info. And then I come back and I go, I got great news for you. I got you approved for $50,000. Your clear package is paid for. You're scheduled to start your auditing next week. And I go, oh, you know, I can't afford that. And you go, that's okay. Your auditing will help you so that you'll open up your flows and you'll be able to make more money. That very rarely works out. So one of the things, this is one of the huge benefits of the Aftermath Foundation. When we help people leave Scientology, very often the people leaving are people who have been subjected to this sort of identity theft, unauthorized credit card transactions, that debt has gone into collections. This is the kind of rock solid black and white evidence the federal authorities love.
It's also an interesting starting point for somebody leaving just in fucking foundation and rubbles of their economic persona.
I'm talking to someone now, I won't say where, obviously. By the age of 20, this person had $140,000 of credit card debt that had all been charged and handed over to Scientology.
Fuck. Good luck ever getting out from underneath
This person
that.
had never made more than $30,000. I mean, at 20, you're only 20. This person.
Yeah.
So in order to obtain that much credit, the information on the applications was fraudulent. Aside from the identity theft, believe it or not, even if I give you permission to use my information, if you get on the phone and you pretend to be me, that's actually
you can't do that
still
shit.
identity theft. Yeah. Okay. And so you've got the identity theft, you have the fraud inherent in the process. And where I'm going with all of that is it is these types of financial crimes that I believe will result in actual prosecutions, federal prosecutions,
That'll pierce that veil of tax exemption.
that will open the door to having the tax exempt status revoked. Now, I could be totally wrong, but for me, that's the path that I see. Now, once their tax exempt status gets revoked, that's kind of the tipping point. They're already losing members. I don't think they can turn that around. I think once you take away the tax exempt status, now their reserves start to dwindle. How many years could you survive on a few $1 billion?
Me personally, several.
At least a couple, right?
I would give Michael a little bit. He would be obviously I would own his soul for 1 billion years, but he could have...
Or two.
You could have several million for your soul, Michael. You could pick the number if I had multiple billion.
Benefits.
Well, you can buy your own for the money I'm going to pay you, so...
No, that is the benefit.
Oh, yeah.
So as of right now, they don't pay property taxes, at least not in the U.S. And there's many other countries where they have exempt status. There's many countries where they don't, actually. They're still on like a government watch list in, Germany and France and stuff.
It was an interesting part of the Going Clear documentary. I think it was, at this point now they're blurring a little bit, but the amount of real estate that sits largely empty.
Yeah.
It's an interesting chess move, buying and basically holding those assets and not even really necessarily using them.
That's right. Well, this actually goes right back to where we started in the beginning about how he's been able to get more dollars out of less money and it ties into what we were talking about, the unreleased OT levels. So I said before that there's supposed to be these expansion benchmarks that Miscavige says, when we reach these benchmarks, I'm going to release OT 9 and 10. Well, one of those benchmarks is every Scientology org in the world is supposed to be a certain size. But orgs were struggling to reach that size. So Miscavige is like, we figured out why the orgs aren't expanding. Their buildings are shit. There's about 150 orgs in the entire world. He goes, we are going to do this thing. He called it the ideal org strategy. He goes, every organization needs a new 50,000 square foot, beautiful renovated building. And when every org in the world has one of these buildings, we'll release OT 9 and 10.
Yeah, because you'll be beating people off with sticks to keep them out of there.
That's right.
Except they're sitting vacant.
These are 50,000 square foot orgs. They can't even afford to pay their electric bill because to heat and cool the place is so fucking expensive. They don't make enough money a week to do that. And so one of the reasons you see so much empty real estate is some of these orgs raised enough money to buy the new building, and 15 years later, they haven't raised enough money to renovate it because there's not enough Scientologists who have enough money to come up with this, come up with what's needed to finish the project.
So how does Miscavige hide that from the current Scientologists?
It's really hard to answer that in a way that makes sense to someone who's using common sense.
Because they're still having these galas every year, right?
Well,
Where they're doing the fucking
shut it off. They
Tom
shut it
Cruise
off.
dinner plate fucking medal, Freedom Award. That was a great presentation, by the way. I was like, "Fuck yeah, Tom Cruise, you're awesome."
That's one of the videos where you can see how much shorter Dave is than Tom. They turned off those events when COVID hit, and they used COVID paranoia as an excuse to keep them turned off for the last 3 years. And only now that they've started these events up again, but they're still not doing them as the big events. They'll do them in like a hotel in Clearwater and then take a video of it. So, but it's one of the ways Miscavige has shielded people from understanding that what they see, what happens if you're a Scientologist, you see that your local org is struggling and you assume that you're just uniquely bad. You assume it must be going so great because of these events. It looks like everything's going great in Mexico. Looks like everything's going great in Russia.
So we need to double down where we are locally.
Yeah. Looks like Africa's almost cleared. I mean, Jesus. And meanwhile, Philadelphia, which is where I, spent most of my time working in Scientology, the Philly org is in this tiny piece of shit building on 13th and Ray Street. It's been there for 40 years. It's smaller today than it was 20 years ago. Any Scientologist in Philadelphia knows that. And yet they watch one of these events. Like I said, they haven't really had these events for the last few years. But when they watch these events, they go, because it never occurs to them Miscavige could actually be lying. They present these stats that you say mathematically don't make any sense. But that's also why I go, it's hard to explain in a way that makes sense to people who are using common sense. It's hard to explain how you can watch something like that and believe it. And I'm embarrassed to look back on the events that I watched. I consider myself to be a pretty smart guy. I never once suspected that some of the info in those events were false. Never once. And someone might go, well, that's because you're not really a smart guy. But I'm just saying.
No, it has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has to do with the environment that you were raised in.
I know, but to someone who's never been in a group like this, it's very hard to understand how could you not suspect? And that's why I go, if you haven't been in that situation, it's hard to explain. Because it's hard for me to explain it to myself.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to explain to myself, thinking back on some of the stuff I heard and go, how could I not have suspected? There's something unique about a cult's, a high control group's ability to control its members. I said this, a cult expert named Steve Hassan, he's got something called the BITE model, and BITE. So behavior, information, thought, emotion. BITE, BITE. These are it's part of his structure of how high control groups control its members. They control your behavior, your access to information, your thoughts, and your emotions. And when you are able to control those things in an individual, it seems to me you're essentially controlling their reason. You're controlling their ability to use logic. Because otherwise, very intelligent people end up believing some really stupid shit. And it's hard to explain how a smart person can fall for stupid shit. but it has something to do.
It happens all the time, though.
It does. I know.
So, and that leads me to, I'm curious about how you're helping people who are leaving. Talk to me about the Aftermath Foundation.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be, depending on when you found Scientology, do you have any info on like the average age people come across this?
No.
How about the average age for people leaving?
I don't know anything about average age.
Okay.
I would say
I'm wondering if there's any trends. Like, are there more people who leave in their 30s? Because, of course, it could be life circumstances or all that stuff. I'm just fascinated to know when people kind of find it and then when people
well, the first
leave.
part of that is a little easier to answer, only in the sense that these days, the vast majority of members are people who were born in.
Okay.
I mean, you already have third and fourth generation Scientologists. And there are people who still join Scientology. More people, they're losing members faster than they're gaining them. But the members that they do have, I would say well over half are people who didn't join. They were brought up in it. And when those people leave, it's definitely not before the age of 18 because they're not even able to. A lot of people who leave just, they don't necessarily escape per se. They just stop going to course, stop getting auditing, stop talking about it with their family members. You know, a lot of people are able to leave and just, like, they've already got a normal life. Scientology is a part of that life. They live in the real world. They have a real job.
Yeah.
They do it quietly and they don't talk about it.
They just drift.
So that their family members won't disconnect from them. And whether it's because of my work with the Aftermath Foundation or just because I have a YouTube channel, I end up privately talking with an awful lot of those people. An awful lot of those people.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So the Aftermath Foundation is there to help people who are leaving Scientology or want to leave Scientology, but just do not have the resources to be able to do that. So, I mean, we'll help people, whether they're Sea Org members or staff members or public even, who need help in the process of leaving Scientology. We don't convince people to leave. But when someone's like, look, I need to leave, but I have no money, I have no transportation, I have no driver's license, I have no resume, we go, we got you. Where do you want to go? We'll help get them an apartment. We'll help get them a car, get them a GED, get them a license, get them a job, all that stuff.
It's insane. It sounds like fucking starting over.
It is. It is. Now, so the way we see ourselves is just a safety net. That, because not everyone who leaves Scientology needs that kind of help. Some people just need someone to talk to. I mean, Scientology is such a weird experience with its own language that just having someone to talk to who knows exactly what you're saying and what you're talking about is very helpful. Some people just want that help.
Yeah.
But we've helped Sea Org members escape who were in the exact situation I just described. They literally had nothing and no one and nowhere to go. And we've helped public Scientologists, for example, who were convinced to quit their job, give up their lease, fly halfway around the world to take a job at a Scientology org, and then were left there stranded with nothing and not even enough money to get home. So we'll get them back home. Maybe they get home and they've already got family to help them. We go, what do you need? You just need to get home? Good, we'll help you get home. So we say we will do anything needed to help anyone leave Scientology who needs it. And it's incredible. I mean, I feel like it's been 5 years or so now. Every single week we're helping someone leave Scientology.
One of the things that struck me from both the documentary and the TV show is some of the lengths that people have to go through to leave.
Yeah.
The hiding in trunks of cars, I don't want to say storytelling, but the depths that they have to go to create a little bit of a gap so they can literally run.
Oh yeah.
But how does Scientology justify their retrieval efforts? I don't even know the fucking right word to use for that.
I'll tell you. Well, they call it the blow drill. In Scientology, blowing, I don't know why L. Ron Hubbard used this word. Blowing means basically trying to escape, an unauthorized departure, going AWOL. So blowing is going AWOL.
Okay.
And when someone blows, they have the blow drill, which is all the wheels they set in motion to recover the person. And that includes hiring the firms that will look for credit card transactions to figure out where you are and all that kind of shit. It's crazy. They've got an in-house travel agency that they can use to see if you're purchasing tickets, airline tickets, anything. They can set up alerts, all that kind of shit. Private investigators, everything. Here's how they explain this. They go, in Scientology, you are natively a good person. You don't want to do wrong. So when you do something bad, you automatically try to withhold yourself from doing further bad things by leaving. So if you're in Scientology, they'll go, you did something bad on your post, or you did something bad in Scientology, and you're trying to protect Scientology from your crimes by departing so that you can't commit any more crimes against Scientology. But we care about you so much that we don't want you to feel degraded about yourself. We're going to bring you back so that you have an opportunity to get it off your chest, so that you know you're not a bad person and you are worthy of Scientology.
That is some of the most circular fucking logic I have ever heard.
That's how they
Holy
explain it.
shit.
We're not doing it for us. We're doing it for you. We don't want you to feel degraded and ashamed for all the things you should have done and didn't, or the things you've done that you shouldn't have done. And if you want to leave, you can leave, but just do it the right way. Come back. That woman who escaped in the trunk of a car, she went back.
Really? How much time?
She went back a couple weeks later and routed out the right way, and then ended up leaving in the end eventually. But I'm using that as an example because where do you have to be mentally to escape in the trunk of a stranger's car?
Yeah.
And yet they still had the influence.
To have her come back willingly.
Yes.
I do remember hearing about that, yeah. And I believe she agreed to go back because of the potential cascading effects on her family if she would have left the way that she did.
That's right.
Do you think there's, in the methodology or ideology, do you think that there is a kernel of good in there somewhere? Mm-hmm. Do you think that L. Ron Hubbard had... What do you think his intent was behind it?
I think, and there's so many layers to this.
Yeah.
I do think his intentions were fundamentally good. I don't think he thought he was hurting anybody. I don't think he thought he was creating a system that hurt people. And again, I don't know, you could fall back on the easy. You got to break some eggs to make an omelet. Like I think even L. Ron Hubbard would say, our goal is to save every man, woman, and child on this planet and in this galaxy. And if that means stepping on some toes or pissing some people off or making some mistakes, that's what's going to happen. But we're net good. And we are the only chance anyone has to escape this trap. I believe L. Ron Hubbard believed that.
Yeah.
So even the parts of Scientology that are very destructive, either to families or socially or psychically, whatever, I think he thought it was all worth it. It was all, I want to say collateral damage, except I don't think L. Ron Hubbard thought he was doing damage.
What was his aversion? Where did it come from for psychiatry and psychologists?
My understanding is that it came from the fact that they weren't interested in Dianetics.
Yeah, because he submitted it to him, right?
Exactly.
And they were like,
And even
today.
Well, and even I think the earliest versions of Dianetics had a foreword that credited Sigmund Freud and all sorts of other people who had worked, in the humanities and stuff. I really do think it started with them being like, "You're a quack," and he was like, "Oh, well, I'll show you.
I'll create my own system."
And then I'll say that the evil psychiatrist overlords are the reason for the entire decline of this sector of the galaxy.
Is that really pressed hard inside of Scientology?
Yes. There is nothing more evil in Scientology than a psychiatrist.
Why?
I mean, on a common sense level, it's hard to give a really good answer. But it does have to do with that, where when he talks about psychiatry and psychiatrists, he's not just talking about it from a this lifetime or a this planet perspective. There's one reference tucked away deep in Scientology where he says, psychiatrists are actually an exception to the rule that Thetans are natively good. Because
damn, that's pointed.
Because psychiatrist Thetans came from the planet Farsec. We're all having a good time here.
Yep.
I mean,
Michael, I need you to take this more seriously.
you can't not laugh at this shit. And, seriously, so...
I mean, you and I can sit here and laugh at this. There are tens of fucking thousands of people that would look at us and be like, fuck you guys.
Yeah. So you start from him literally creating Dianetics and hoping the AMA and the APA would adopt this thing and it will essentially take over the field of mental health, to him being like, you're all natively evil spiritual beings and we're going to destroy you and try to get you imprisoned. I mean, they literally have a campaign running through one of Scientology's front groups to just try and get psychiatrists arrested and imprisoned.
Really?
Absolutely.
Do those things fall under Miscavige's purview? All these little outcroppings that may not be directly associated to the church?
Oh yeah. I mean, this particular front group, they don't even try to pretend like it's not associated with the church. They openly take credit for it. In Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, there is a building. It is called Psychiatry, the Industry of Death Museum. It says Psychiatry, the Industry of Death. And you can walk in off the street. It's made for normal people. It's not made for Scientologists. And they give you a tour of all of the ways in which psychiatry has destroyed the world, including saying psychiatrists were responsible for the Holocaust, responsible for 9/11, responsible for everything under the sun, moon, and stars. So, but your question was, where did this infatuation came from?
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, it was just like, we're not interested in your mental therapy.
Yeah. Just straight from that rejection, and it just lit a fire under him that would never be put out.
Yeah.
I wonder what Miscavige would do if Scientology did fall apart. Like, where do you go in life?
Yeah. Yeah. Scientology, I mean, there are so many layers of protection that exists in the United States specifically for religious organizations. Scientology has leveraged this hugely. It's why they pretend to be a good faith actor of interfaith organizations. They want other religious groups to think that in order to support religious freedom in general, you have to protect the Scientologists as well. Whereas in the way I see it, other religious groups should go, you guys are the ones who make things difficult for us. Like we don't want you under our umbrella. But Scientology goes out of its way to pretend to be as religious as possible so that the religious protections that exist in this country for actual religions
Apply to them too.
apply to them. And I'm mentioning all this because I think it applies to the idea of Scientology falling apart. Even if you take away Scientology's tax-exempt status, I don't know that makes Scientology fall apart. It just sets it up where their finances probably start going like this, and they start going like this. How long they can continue to exist is really anybody's guess. But I just don't think them falling apart is even realistic, unless the tax-exempt status, once it's taken away, it also removes some of the protections they have in the courts against various kinds of lawsuits. You could then see some class action lawsuits that maybe result in some billion or multi-billion-dollar settlements that could result in liquidation of assets.
Yeah, financially cripple them.
So that's not impossible. But if you have a few billion, how much of that would you spend? Would you spend $2 billion to protect the remaining $1 billion? Probably.
Yeah.
Could lawyers be kicking this can down the line for decades?
100%.
So it's an interesting sort of academic exercise to think about what Miscavige could do if things came falling apart.
Yeah.
But not only are there so many levels of protection baked into just our system, our U.S. system, but Scientology was intentionally reorganized in a legal way with multiple different interconnected and disconnected organizations to make it as impervious as possible to being dismantled. Just play shell games and offshore this and overseas trust and trust behind trust and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I can't knock the strategy.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
It's a good question.
I mean, it seems like you, I don't want to say that you lost a portion of your life. You spent a portion of your life in a place that you now have, my words, not yours, have come to a place where you're like, fuck, that was a little bit weird. What do you want to do going forward?
Yeah. I feel like what I most enjoy doing is nothing.
Okay.
I really do enjoy just relaxing and doing nothing. And I'm certainly, like, I'm going to answer this a few different ways. I only started doing my channel every day 8 months ago. Well, I've been out of Scientology since 2014. So it's not like the Scientology activism part of my life is what I've been doing ever since I left Scientology. I've been working, got my business, got my kids, got my family, got plenty of shit I can do. So it's almost like what I'm doing with my channel and what I'm doing with the Aftermath Foundation, that takes up my time and it provides value and it gives me purpose and direction. But I'd be fine just doing nothing as well. You know?
Do you want Scientology to cease to exist?
I want it to lose its tax-exempt status so that it is not shielded from accountability in these issues of abuse against children and the elderly. I'm not on some campaign to make Scientology cease to exist. I do want to help dismantle this mirage they've created that they really should have the religious protections that exist in this country for religions. And I know I might be contradicting myself a little bit because earlier I made the argument, you know, Scientology could probably be described as a religion. I just feel like there's a difference between that and tax exemption and being able to be held legally accountable. So I don't begrudge Scientologists from believing in Scientology. I'm not on a mission to make Scientology cease to exist as a belief system or whatever. I want Scientology to be able to be held accountable, and I want people who feel who are in a position where they can't leave. I want to be able to provide resources so that people know if you want to leave, you can. And I feel like as long as there are people like Scientology could theoretically, we mentioned earlier, Miscavige has it in his power to make all the changes that he wants as long as he convinces people it's what L. Ron Hubbard really wanted. Miscavige has it in his power to create a kinder, gentler version of Scientology that's not just hell-bent on destroying families, right? He could. Mm-hmm. He won't, but he could. So as long as Scientology exists in a way where families are being destroyed and people are unable to leave because of the incredible destruction it's going to create in their families, then I will have a reason to keep doing some form of Scientology activism. But if the day comes where that's no longer what Scientology looks like and that's no longer how it behaves, and it's just another belief system that I happen to disagree with, it's just another way for people to waste money, but it's not destroying families and it's not abusing children and the elderly, I'll go off and do something else. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
It could just be retirement, you know.
I don't know how long I could do nothing for. I enjoy it deeply too, but it's like I reach a point where I'm like, I need to do fucking something or I'm going to go crazy.
That's actually why I started doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I was at a period where, I was doing the hedge fund research work for a long time. And then I sort of transitioned into doing real estate investing. And there's a period where I was just kind of not doing very much. And I was actually watching an episode of Rogan where he and his guest were talking about, the guest said something about what's wrong with retiring is that, oh, it'd be so hard to have nothing to do. And then Joe was like, what are you shitting me? I would do this. I would do this. I would work on my jiu-jitsu. And I was like, that sounds like something that could occupy my time. And
oh, it'll occupy your time.
Yeah. So when I say, And so when I say do nothing, I just mean I don't have to do something.
Yeah.
I can always stay busy. That's the easy part.
I mean, we could get together and create a religious philosophy that really ropes people in. You know what I'm talking about here? And we could put our heads together on this.
Well, hey, Scientology claims one sector of the galaxy. We could claim the other sector of the galaxy and figure out a little franchise system.
Why don't we take on the multiverse?
Yes.
We'll do the multiverse. So they're just one of the cards in our deck of cards, and they can work for us.
Everything, everywhere, all the time, Scientology style.
Fuck that. How can people support the Aftermath Foundation?
TheAftermathFoundation.org is a website. If people just want to make a donation, they can donate there. There's a Facebook page. Anybody can volunteer. And here's what volunteer means in this sense. If someone goes, hey, there's a Scientology org in my city. If there's someone leaving Scientology and they need some kind of help, I at least want to be able to have an opportunity to provide that help if I can. We'll put you on a list.
Yeah.
Volunteer at theaftermathfoundation.org is where people can offer to help that way. And if we created can you pull up real quick the spshop.com? We created...
Is this suppressivepersonshot.com?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
So
I'm riveted about the designs we're about to see. Michael's going to be wearing one of these by next week.
Hell yeah.
in one of the hate sites they created about Mike Rinder, they created a little GIF of him being a bobblehead because they're like, all Mike does is sit next to Leah and go, yes, Leah, yes, Leah. And we're like, you know what? We're going to make a Mike Rinder bobblehead and sell it as merch
I'm buying one of those
to
today.
support.
Michael, do you want one?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll have one for his desk and one for mine.
In my interview with Lex,
That's
you'll
it?
see this bobblehead sitting on the desk in front of him.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it was tied to this. This is awesome.
Somewhere on here, you should be able to see the bobblehead. There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
Oh,
So if somebody wants to support the
Add to
Aftermath
cart.
Foundation and they want to get some awesome merch, they can guess 100% of the money from the SP shop goes to the Aftermath Foundation.
what else would you want people to know about? We've been at it for 3 hours.
Have we?
And I'm actually glad that we didn't even define what Scientology is. I would much rather talk about your experiences in it. But what is it? What else would you want people to know?
I mean, even though we didn't define it, I think we did cover it in a way where people do.
I think we covered its impact, which is
Yeah.
probably more.
Because the truth is, even though we didn't define the word, we did discuss exactly what Scientologists believe
Yeah.
at the lower levels and the highest levels.
Yeah.
You know, I guess one thing I would want to say is Scientologists are really good people. Like they just, even the ones who are in Scientology, they're in Scientology because they think it's actually the only way to help the entire population of Earth.
Yeah.
And not just Earth, but this sector of the galaxy. They truly believe that. They're not motivated by an intent to harm or to destroy. They're not in Scientology because they want to destroy families. Even the people who are destroying the families aren't there because they want to destroy families. And it's one of these things where you don't have to be a bad person or a stupid person to wind up in these organizations. And Scientology is not even unique. There are other organizations that are just as bad and controlling and manipulative and evil.
Yeah.
And here's where it really comes down to the thing I want people to either know or understand. If your reaction or your response to all this is, holy shit, I can't imagine, that could never happen to me, then I feel like you haven't really understood the story. Because I think only when you realize how it could happen to you is it now not going to happen to you. If you think you're impervious to it, then you have a blind spot.
You're probably actually very susceptible.
100%.
I think it's important for people to sit with their beliefs and be very introspective and have an understanding of the why. Why do I believe this? Was the data set that this belief is formed from, is it valid? Has it changed over time? You know? Yeah, it's the people who think that would never or could never happen to you. Maybe it is.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's again, one of the reasons why when I talk about Scientology on my channel, and, we've been having fun, we've been laughing, we joke about it, but we haven't insulted Scientologists.
Yeah.
And I think even a Scientologist watching this interview would go, but they're not wrong. They might go, oh shit, I'm not allowed to listen to this. And they go, but they're not wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to insult anybody. People, I take that back. I want to insult people that have the desire to harm others. Like I'm all about insulting those people.
Yeah.
Because I think you should protect other people and help, put your hand down the ladder to help raise people up, not stand on their fucking head so you can climb higher up. Yeah. Where can people find you?
Growing up in Scientology on YouTube is where I spend most of my days. I don't mess around with Facebook that much. I'm on Twitter, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
People can, if someone goes to the YouTube channel, they can find my socials from there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What do you want to close it out with?
I think that's it, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We covered a lot of ground. Michael, questions?
Questions. Have you seen?
And Michael's like, where the fuck do I sign up for Scientology?
This is what I've been doing all podcast. The YouTube channel Reckless Ben.
Yes, I'm actually in touch.
Yeah.
I'm in touch with Ben.
Awesome, yeah, because I
Who is
watched
it?
Some
his whole.
fantastic stuff.
What is it's the first time I've ever heard of it.
So
what is it?
He infiltrated Scientology with camera glasses, and there's like 10 episodes before they catch him. And it just goes, he goes through the whole process, and it's really cool.
I'm going to declare him as a suppressive person right now.
Oh, he's definitely declared a suppressed person. So the way he closed off his series on Scientology is they took a very powerful LED projector and just projected Scientology
I
sucks
forgot about that.
across their giant, huge sign across their building. And of course, Scientology is calling the police, and they're like, they couldn't do anything about it because they're like, we're on a public sidewalk. I mean, we're not vandalizing the building, right?
Yep.
And they have more coming too.
Awesome.
They have more. They just did
I can tell you what channel I'm going to be watching later
Reckless
today.
Ben.
Yep.
Even their non-Scientology content is pretty impressive.
They
They
do lots of good
infiltrated. They
stuff.
took over a restaurant that was run by a cult, where the cult was everyone in the restaurant works for free labor, and they get away with it because technically everyone who works a
Sounds
shift,
like
everyone who works
burgers.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
what is it?
There was a cult up here. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I might have overstepped by saying it was a cult. There was a burger chain up here called Mudman Burgers that was basically having free labor. It was tied to a religious organization, right?
Yeah,
It was
I
here
think it
in the
was
valley.
Volunteer work.
Yeah,
quote
volunteer
unquote,
work.
but working for free, basically.
Yeah.
So the way the way it worked out in this video is everyone who worked a shift at the restaurant was technically part owner of the LLC that the restaurant owned. So Ben joined the cult, started working at the restaurant, and then sent in like 30 of his friends to also join the cult and work in the restaurant so that they had the majority vote of the LLC. And they fired all the cult members. It's absolutely brilliant.
Fuck yes, I like this
that's
guy.
hilarious.
No, he's got more
That's
stuff coming
awesome.
too.
Hell
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that channel.
Dude, thank you for making the travel up here.
Thanks for having me.
We need to have round 2. I need to go do some more documentary research, though. I get deep into that. I love it. It drives my wife insane. She'll be like, no, not again.
Anytime.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you, man. It was awesome.